The warrior looked at his opponents and wondered how long these guys would continue to attack him. One of the attackers said it was time to destroy this guy and rushed into the attack again. The young man put his sword forward and put up a good fight. The wounded young man had no intention of giving up, even though there were many enemies and the wounds on his body were bleeding. The young man thought they had made a deal, but he was stabbed in the back. But in any case, he had to protect his master. The guy said he had to hold on with all his might. Help was on the way. His opponent asked if by help he meant these scoundrels. The young man saw that the reinforcements had been destroyed. The villains held the heads of his warriors in their hands. The guy didn't understand how this could have happened. His opponent was the leader of the Merima Alliance, the first sword piercing the sky, Dan Chunhak. The Alliance leader approached the young man and said that the power of the Ice Pavilion was truly formidable. They were able to put up a worthy resistance. The young man expressed surprise that his opponent had the courage to be so confident. If he had met the master himself, he would certainly have had serious problems. The warriors were outraged. How dare this scoundrel speak to their master like that? His tongue should be cut out. The warriors declared that this guy would not be forgiven. He would die by their hands right now. A girl appeared on the porch of the house and shouted, ordering them to stop. The young man told Lady Huayan not to come closer. The girl replied that everything was fine and that they should not worry about her. Dan Chunhak ordered his soldiers to step aside. The soldiers formed a circle around the rivals. Huayan stood between them. Dan Chunhak told the girl that not only had she been deceived by these scoundrels, but she had also run away from home. He had never been so disgraced. The man reached out his hand to the girl and said that everyone makes mistakes and can be forgiven. Like her father, he was giving her one last chance to return. Huayan was smart, so she should understand what choice she had to make. Huayan asked if her father would let them live if she returned. Dan Chunhak remained silent in response. But from his gaze, the girl understood that she should not expect mercy from him. Huayan said she understood everything and asked her father for forgiveness. However, she did not reach out her hand to him. The young man shouted, ordering the lady to step back. The leader of the Murima Alliance swung his sword and struck his own daughter. Blood gushed from her body. The young man shouted, demanding that Dan Chunhak stop immediately. The Alliance leader turned around and said that he no longer had a daughter. The girl collapsed to the ground. Dan Chunhak added that his daughter had fallen under the influence of the orcs. The man declared that their only mission now was to restore the soul of the Central Plains. Dan Chunhak ordered his warriors to restore order here. The young man raised his sword again and began to fend off the attacks of his advancing opponents. He ordered his warriors to fight to the end. Huayan, losing consciousness, thought she had to return and apologize for not being able to keep her word. The master of the North Sea Palace, Sol Mudak, ordered the messenger to repeat his words. The man repeated that the members of the Ice Pavilion, including Lord Bai Mu Yue, who had gone as an envoy to negotiate with the Fighting Alliance, had clashed with the Murima Alliance in battle. The messenger added that they had all been destroyed. Sol Mudak rose from his throne and said that this was unforgivable. He would never forgive them and would wipe them off the face of the earth. Sol Mudak ordered everyone to prepare. They were going to the Central Plains. Wounded and bleeding, Dan Chunhak, losing strength, fell to his knees. The warrior, who had suffered multiple wounds, understood that they had been defeated and destroyed. He realized that his inner strength was depleted. Was this really the end? Dan Chunhak told his opponent to just kill him. The Lord of the North Sea Palace silently looked at the wounded man. Sol Mudak asked Dan Chunhak why he had done this to his daughter and for what sins. The wounded warrior laughed and asked if Sol Mudak still did not understand. The leader's daughter had fallen in love with a barbarian like this guy. Wouldn't it be a big mistake to let her live? Dan Chunhak said that the Lord of the North Sea could capture Jiangnan, but he still wouldn't get what he wanted most. After these words, the leader of the alliance was pierced through by a powerful energy beam. The old man thought, could this really be the end? At the last moment, he remembered his daughter when she was still a small child. Why did she betray her father and get involved with this barbarian? That night, with the death of the alliance leader, Murima Dan Chunhak, the great blood battle, which had lasted 6 months, came to an end. It was then that the living legend of the North Sea, Master Sol Mudak, became the undisputed ruler of the Central Plains. However, Sol Mudak showed no emotion. He just quietly looked up at the moon. In his chambers, Sol Mudak thought that now he had only this flower left. In front of him stood a pot with a red flower growing in it. The Lord of the North Sea indulged in memories. Once a young man was writing a treatise on the influence of art on human health when joyful exclamations rang out behind him. Sol Mudak asked Huayan what had happened. The girl was holding a pot with a flower in her hands and said that the flower of love had finally bloomed. Sol Mudak said that the flower of love only blooms when two people truly love each other. The girl replied that she had never doubted his feelings, although she was very upset that the flower had not bloomed for so long. But now it had bloomed, and it was incredibly beautiful. Hua Yeon said with tears in her eyes that it wasn't just her one-sided love. Sol Mudok also sincerely loved her, and the young man confirmed this. Sol Mudok hugged the girl and said that he loved only her because she was so beautiful. Sol Mudo thought that Hua Yeon was truly happy now, and he was grateful to this flower. After these memories, the Lord of the North Sea decided that he must fill the entire garden with flowers of love for Hua Yeon. The young man said that no matter how hard he tried, he could not forget her. The young man was surprised, but the flower of love bloomed again. The young man wondered how this was possible. The Lord ordered his assistant to find someone who could explain what had just happened before his eyes. If necessary, they would have to search the entire Central Plains, but an explanation must be found. Several days passed. The Manbaksha, who were said to know everything in the world, gathered at the ice palace of the Northern Sea. The elders wondered why the divine palace of the Northern Sea had invited them. The elders heard a voice from the sky ordering them to appear, and they decided to go outside to see what had happened. The people saw a garden of flowers and said it was a sight to behold. For the first time in their lives, they saw a garden filled with flowers of love. Such a flower may never be seen again in a lifetime. The symbol for love was inscribed on the stems. It was undoubtedly the flower of love. The sages wondered how so many rare flowers could exist in one place. At that moment, the Lord of the North Sea appeared behind them and asked if they liked what they saw. The elder asked who was standing before them. The young man introduced himself and gave his name. He added that he was the owner of this garden. The sages were amazed. Could it be that Sol Mudok himself was standing before them? The absolute ruler of the Central Plains noted that this garden was filled with flowers of love. The young man added that he and his beloved had made the flower bloom with the power of their love. However, when his beloved died, the flower also disappeared. However, for some unknown reason, the flower had been reborn a few days ago. The elder was surprised. Had the flower of love really been reborn? The wise men decided that this was a strange phenomenon and a real mystery to them. Although there was one possibility. One of the elders said that there is a possibility of rebirth in a new body, and this is called reincarnation. It seems that the deceased love of the palace owner has been reincarnated somewhere in this world, but her current whereabouts are unknown. The elder added that if this were not the case, there was simply no other explanation for the flower of love blooming again. Sol Mudok thought about reincarnation and felt hope rising within him. The Lord thought that he had succeeded in entering the Central Plains and uniting the entire region, fulfilling the long-held desire of the North Sea. But all that remained in his soul was emptiness. The North Sea was thriving, but his longing for Hua Yeon only grew stronger. He had lost the girl and could find no meaning in living. Sol Mudok demanded that the elders explain how he could find his beloved. The old man said that the flower of love glows when two lovers are in the same place. When the lord of the palace finds his beloved, the flower of love will shine. The young man remembered that when Hua Yeon brought him this flower, it did indeed glow. At the time, he did not attach any significance to it, but perhaps there was a secret hidden in it. The elder said that it would be difficult to carry a living flower with him, so he suggested turning the flower of love into a jewel that he could always keep with him. Sol Mudok announced that he would set off in 10 days, and by that time, all preparations must be completed. The Lord added that if everything went well, he would reward each of the Manbaksha with 100 yang of the highest quality gold. Sol Mudok thought he would never see her again, but now there was great hope in his heart. The young man decided that he would never give up this hope and would strive to make it come true. Wherever Hua Yeon was, he would follow her even to hell. 10 days later, the ship was sailing full steam ahead in the right direction. A lot of time had passed in the search. Sol Mudok looked at the navigation chart and marked the place where his ship was supposed to arrive. The last place they had not yet searched was Hainan. The young man thought that it had been 3 years and 5 months since he began a search. Having searched the entire central part of the country, he still could not find his beloved. During his search for Hua Yeon, he had progressed from the transformation level to the profound level and had undergone a complete metamorphosis twice. Sol Mudok remembered a conversation with his beloved. At the time, he did not understand why the girl needed to go. Hua Yeon replied that her father had decided to take part in the negotiations. If she went, he would definitely be able to understand her lover's intentions. Sol Mudok replied that it could be a trap. Hua Yeon said she wanted to trust her father at least this once. She asked Sol Mudok to let her do so. The young man agreed, but warned her that if she sensed something was wrong, she should leave without hesitation. The girl was heading to Hainan. Hua Yeon took something out of her sleeve and told Sol Mudok to take it. It was a memento left to her by her mother. She said that the necklace had the ability to return to the person who gave it. The young man said that this necklace would always guide him back to her. Hwa-yeon said not to worry, she would never leave him. Sol-Modak thought that he should have stopped her at all costs. A storm broke out at sea. The sailors shouted that everyone should hold on to the ship's railings as tightly as possible and tie themselves with ropes. Sol-Mudo thought that the sudden storm was a bad sign. The young man took the appropriate stance and activated the protective key 1,000-kilogram hammer. A protective sphere formed around Sol-Modak, preventing the destructive effects of the raging sea. The ship rocked violently on the waves, and sailors who were not securely fastened to the ship's railings began to fall into the water. The passengers on board began to call for help. They were women and a child. Sol-Modak decided that something had to be done urgently. A sailor shouted that another huge wave was approaching. It was necessary to hold on tight so as not to be washed away into the sea. Sol-Modak realized that the ship would not withstand such a strong wave again. There was only one way out. The young man decided to use his unique abilities to save the ship. The sailors were surprised. Why had it gotten so cold all of a sudden? Sol-Modak realized that he had to freeze the waves. The ice tunnel was activated. The young man noticed that the necklace had begun to glow. But why now? Suddenly, a powerful beam of light pierced the thick clouds and fell directly on the hero. The sun appeared in the sky, and Sol-Modak was forced to squint. The sailors couldn't believe their eyes. The storm had ended unusually quickly. Land appeared ahead on the course. Sol-Modak felt very weak and did not understand where he was. Why was it so cramped here? Was he in a carriage now? The young man did not understand what he was doing here, because just a moment ago he had been fighting the storm. Screams came from somewhere. Sol-Modak looked out of the carriage and saw people running away from huge insects. A girl and a child were standing by the road. They watched the insects' actions with horror. The man shouted that he would save Sabina and Annie. Suddenly, the carriage and the huge insects were cut to pieces. The old man was surprised. What had happened to the first-class carriage? Sol-Modak left the carriage. He assumed that he had probably ended up in a forest somewhere in the Central Plains. Seeing the foreigners, Sol-Modak realized that he had traveled quite far. Huge flies continued to circle above the people. Sol-Modak activated the Divine Ice Shot and froze one of the giant flies. The young man did not understand how a simple creature dared to attack a human just because it had grown in size. He said he could not forgive such a thing. Sol-Modak used ice crystals in the Divine Ice Shot, destroying all the flies nearby. The oldest of the men said his name was Edmund Roll and that he was the head of the Roll Trading Guild. The man thanked Sol-Modak for saving his people and asked the name of the magical swordsman. Since the man was a foreigner, the protagonist did not understand what he was trying to say. Sol-Modak asked if anyone present could speak the language of the Central Plains. In response, silence reigned. The strangers began to talk among themselves in an incomprehensible language. Sol-Modak was surprised. Could it be that no one present knew the language of the Central Plains? Another man approached the hero and tried to explain something in his own language. The stranger held out his hand, on which lay a ring, and tried to give it to the young man. The eldest of the foreigners began to make strange movements, trying to explain the meaning of his words with gestures. Sol-Modak still did not understand anything, and the expression on his face spoke volumes. The man asked if the young man now understood what he was saying. Sol-Modak was surprised because this man had suddenly begun to speak fluently in the language of the Central Plains. Was this the power of the ring? The man confirmed this and added that it seemed to be the language of a place called the Central Plains. The elder said he wanted to introduce himself again. His name was Edmund Roll, and he was the head of the Roll Trading Guild. The man thanked the young man again for saving the guild members and asked what the magical swordsman's name was. Sol-Modak replied that he did not know what the term magical swordsman meant, but his name was Sol-Modak. Edmund was surprised. Did the young man really not know what a magical swordsman was? A magical swordsman is a person who uses a sword and magic at the same time. Sol-Modak asked what magic was. Edmund was amazed that this man had just shot ice and didn't know what magic was. The hero did not understand where this man came from or how to even begin a conversation with him. Sol-Modak held out his hand and said he would ask a question, asking Edmund to answer quickly. The old man was frightened and thought that this man was definitely crazy. But what if this madman started rampaging right now? Sol-Modak asked Edmund, sitting by the fire, if there really was such a thing as magic in this part of the Central Plains. The world is so big. Edmund thought he had finally managed to calm this guy down a little. Mr. Roll asked where exactly the place called the Central Plains was located. Sol-Modak thought that these people had come here without even knowing where they were. Edmund Roll asked what exactly the young man was talking about. Sol Mudak explained that it was strange to ask where the Central Plains were when you were standing on their land. The man thought again that this guy was definitely crazy. Edmund told the swordsman that this was not the Central Plains, but a forest on the way to Barhan, the capital of the Kingdom of Drake. Sol Mudak replied that in his entire life he had never heard anyone call the Central Plains Drake. Edmund didn't look too old, but could he already be senile? Mr. Roll decided that this crazy guy shouldn't be talking like that. The man replied that he was only 50 years old. He was worried about the young man because he kept insisting that this place was the Central Plains. Sol Mudak suggested asking the guy who was constantly watching them from behind a tree. Edmund wondered how Leo had ended up here. Sol Mudak asked the boy if this was the Central Plains. Sol Mudak asked why the boy was silent. Edmund noticed that Leo did not understand a single word. The man held out a ring and told the young man to put it on his finger and say language interpretation. Edmund thought it was a great waste to give such expensive interpretation magic to this crazy boy, but he couldn't let the young man treat him like a feeble-minded old man. Sol Mudak put on the ring, said the necessary words, and felt something incredible. Now the hero understood what these foreigners were saying. He thought it was an amazing spell. Sol Mudak turned to the child and asked his name. The young man replied that his name was Leo. Sol Mudak asked Leo if this was the Central Plains or Drake. Leo asked where the Central Plains were. Leo added that it was a forest located on the way to Barhan, the capital of the Kingdom of Drake. Sol Mudak was surprised, wondering if this boy was also suffering from dementia. The young man asked if Edmund had asked the child to answer that way on purpose. Mr. Roll denied this. He added that if there were still doubts, the other members of the guild could be asked. Sol Mudak thought that if this man said so, then he probably wasn't lying. Did that mean that this really wasn't the Central Plains? Sol Mudak remembered fighting the storm on the ship until the very end. However, when he opened his eyes, he found himself in a carriage. Sol Mudak thought with horror, does this mean that he had been transported through space? Strange thoughts began to visit the hero. Why did this happen to him? Sol Mudak tried to rethink what had happened. Why was he in the Kingdom of Drake? Suddenly, an unfamiliar feeling arose in his chest. The young man was surprised by the strange sensation he had just experienced in his chest. Edmund asked if the young man believed him now. Sol Mudak thought that this energy was different from anything he had ever felt before. Mr. Roll asked what had happened and where the young man was going. The hero decided that he needed to verify something. The young man understood that this was pure energy, and it was definitely different from the energy of the Central Plains. Suddenly, the same feeling arose in his chest again. Sol Mudak cried out loudly, his eyes glowing unnaturally. The amount of chi accumulated in his dantian had doubled compared to its normal state. But why was he here and not in the Central Plains? The hero wanted to find Huayan as soon as possible. Could it be because of the light that came from the necklace at that moment? Huayan said that this necklace could return to the person who gave it to her. The hero assumed that he had come here to meet his beloved. It was the only explanation. Huayan must definitely be here. Edmund asked what it was and where the magical swordsman had gone. The young man explained that he had some business to attend to, so he had to leave for a short while. He had one more question. The man wondered why this guy was smiling so unpleasantly. Sol Mudak clarified that, according to a boy named Leo, this place was called Drake. Was that true? Edmund confirmed it. If they continued on their way, they would soon reach Barhan, the capital of this kingdom. The young man asked again where exactly Barhan was located. Leo was surprised that someone could not know where Barhan was. It seemed that this guy had really been trained in the mountains. Leo said that he had heard about such eccentrics many times, but this was the first time he had seen one in person. Sol Mudak replied, "That's right. He had been training in the mountains and had only come out into the world today." The young man added that because of this, he did not know what was happening in the world. Barkan, the Kingdom of Drake. These were all names of places he had never heard of before. Sol Mudak suggested that since they were foreigners, perhaps he was looking at a country of Western barbarians, which he had only heard about in stories. Another child asked if Mr. Magic Swordsman could teach him something. Sol Mudak asked the boy his name. The child replied that his name was Luffy. Edmund Roll wondered why this guy had suddenly become so friendly. He was a completely unpredictable person. The hero began to study this place and the language spoken here, communicating with Luffy. Sol Mudak couldn't believe it, but it turned out that this wasn't even the country of the Western barbarians. It was a completely different world. Studying the map, the young man thought that the terrain looked very strange. In addition, the letters here were not the same as in the Central Plains. Not only did other races such as elves and gnomes exist in this world, beastmen also lived here. The most powerful creature in this world was the dragon, a winged lizard. Luffy said that warp magic could be used by wizards of the 5th circle and above. To do this, they had to draw a round magic circle on the floor and recite a spell. After that, they could instantly go wherever they wanted. The higher the wizard's abilities, the further he could travel. There were spells here that the hero could not understand at all. The young man thought about how many more amazing things there were in this world. Sol Mudok raised his head and saw 3 moons in the sky at once. The hero was forced to admit that this was a different world that did not exist in the Central Plains. Could it be that Hua Yun really called him here? Sol Mudok heard someone scream and wondered what the noise was. A woman's voice replied indignantly. Sol Mudok approached and saw Sabina holding a knife and shouting for no one to come near her. With her other hand, she was holding a child. The man told Sabina not to do that. He was sure that as soon as they got to the capital, she could be cured. After all, there were many magicians in the capital. There was no need to scare Annie like that. Sabina replied that even in the capital, healing magicians were rare and very expensive. Sabina added that the eggs of the killer beetle settle in the heart, and it is unknown when they might turn into larvae. How could anyone cure this? Sabina added that if the eggs turned into larvae, they would tear Annie apart. Sabina swung her knife and said it would be better for them to die before that happened. Sol Mudok told the girl to stop. He understood the situation roughly. The young man promised to cure these people and asked the girl to put down the dagger immediately. Sabina dropped the dagger from her hands and wondered how he had managed to appear there. Sol Mudok told the girl to sit down as the treatment could not be delayed. Edmund Roll asked if the young man knew how to use healing magic. Sol Mudok replied that he did not understand magic. He just knew a little about the healing methods of the place where he lived. The protagonist asked everyone to calm down. The man asked the magical swordsman to save these people. He couldn't repay him generously because he had nothing, but he was willing to do everything in his power to help the young man. Sol Mudok replied that he was going to do it for free, that is, without charge. Sol Mudok said that he would now begin treatment, so everyone should step back a little. Mr. Roll told everyone to step back. Sol Mudok walked decisively toward Sabina. The young man told the girl not to be nervous. It wouldn't take long. Sol Mudok asked her to close her eyes and relax. Sabina and Annie complied. Sol Mudok activated his unique abilities, and the patients' bodies began to glow. Sol Mudok understood that the insect eggs were located near the heart. Now he had to check it. After a thorough scan, the protagonist found what he was looking for. Everyone present held their breath and watched the extraction process closely. They had never seen anything like this before. Sol Mudok realized that the eggs had not yet hatched. That was good. Now it was necessary to control the energy of the impact so as to burn the eggs without damaging the hearts. Sabina and Annie felt heat in their bodies and began to breathe rapidly. After a while, our hero said that everything was ready. Sabina couldn't believe it, but she was glad to hear those words. Sol Mudok explained that he had removed all the insect eggs, so now everyone could rest easy. Edmund asked if Sabina and Annie were really safe now. Leo asked if it was really over. Sol Mudok confirmed it all. The young man added that there would be no side effects, so now there was no need to worry. Annie thanked Mr. Magic Swordsman. Sabina said that the young man was their savior. Everyone present bowed and thanked the young man for his excellent treatment. Sol Mudok, resting under a tree, looked at the night sky and thought that it had been a long day. Sol Mudok looked at the crystal and said that today he missed Hua-Yun even more. He hoped they would be able to meet again soon. The carriages with the people arrived in the capital of Drake. The city walls were visible ahead. Edmund Roll was exhausted from the heat. He said the weather was simply unbearable. The other members of the guild agreed. Luffy offered Mr. Magical Swordsman some water from his flask. Sol Mudok thanked the boy. The young man tasted the water and realized that it was very warm. How could anyone drink this? Sol Mudok released a little cold energy, and the flask was immediately covered with frost. Its temperature dropped significantly. Luffy said that it was very hot now and asked if Mr. Magic Swordsman was okay. Sol Mudok admitted that it was hot, but better than before. The cool water from the chilled flask quenched our hero's thirst. Sol Mudok handed the flask to the child. The boy was surprised at how cold it was. Sol Mudok suggested drinking from this flask because such water tastes much better. The boy took a few sips and was satisfied. Such water really quenches thirst and cools the body. Luffy asked if Mr. Magic Swordsman could freeze his flask too. Sol Mudok thought that this child had been a great help to him, so he couldn't refuse this request. The protagonist activated his ice energy and said that everything was ready. After a while, all the other members of the guild approached our hero, holding out their flasks. As a result, everyone present wanted to get their share of ice water. Sol Mudok thought it would be easy, but fulfilling this request would cause even more problems. Edmund approached and asked Charles what was going on. He wanted an explanation. Luffy said that Mr. Magic Swordsman had made his water ice cold. Everyone else wanted some too. Edmund knelt down and asked Mr. Magic Swordsman to do the same for him. Sol Mudok agreed and asked the man for his flask. Sol Mudok thought that for now, he should stay with the guild and explore this place. These people had helped him solve his main problem, the language barrier. The guy decided that he could cool their water. Mr. Roll took a few sips of cold water and sincerely thanked our hero. The man asked how Mr. Magic Swordsman had made the ice. Sol Mudok was surprised. Was there something wrong? Edmund Roll exclaimed that it was incredibly delicious. He had tried all kinds of ice cream sold on the continent, but this was the first time he had tasted ice cream this delicious. It was truly on a whole other level. Mr. Magic Swordsman was truly delightful. Sol Mudok replied that he had simply frozen water. What did he mean? It tasted different. The man said that when creating ice, the cold properties of mana in the air are usually used to either freeze water directly or collect moisture from the atmosphere. During this process, mana impurities are added to the ice, and it is these impurities that determine the taste of the ice. However, since every wizard has a different affinity for mana, few can make truly pure ice. And this ice is incredibly pure. That's why it was so delicious. Salt Mudok listened to the man and said that now he understood everything. Sol Mudok now understood why there had been such an enthusiastic response. Such a reaction to something as simple as ice made the young man feel even a slight pity for these people. Sol Mudok decided to do it again because he was in a good mood now. Mr. Edmund Roll said he had a proposal for Mr. Magic Swordsman. Several days passed. Our hero continued to stay with this guild. Charles yelled at the workers to carry the buckets more carefully. They had to be delivered to the far end of the store. In this place, our hero froze the water that was in these buckets. The freezing process continued uninterrupted. The result was ice cubes. They filled each of the buckets. Sol Mudok asked Edmund if he really planned to revive the trade guild's business by selling the ice he had made. Mr. Roll replied that this was exactly what he intended to do. Sol Mudok thought that this was not surprising because this man kept saying that it was good ice and that he was a magician. So Edmund had ulterior motives. The protagonist decided that he just wanted to restore his lost reputation and had no malicious intent. Sol Mudok didn't want to do it for nothing, so he had to bargain a little. The young man said that since he was making the ice and Edmund was only selling it, he would take 70% of the proceeds. Mr. Roll thought that the ice would sell like hotcakes, so it was a good offer. However, the man still tried to bargain further. Edmund said that in order to sell the ice, he would need to hire not only a wagon for transportation, but also workers to pull the wagon, as well as a mage to make sure the ice didn't melt. He would need a fairly large investment. Mr. Roll asked his partner to make some concessions. Sol Mudok suggested a 60-40 split. Edmund was surprised. Was it really that simple? The man suggested that they sign a contract. Sol Mudok agreed to the deal simply because he thought it would be a good place to study the world. However, things were now going much better than expected. An agitated Charles entered the room and said that Mr. Edmund should step outside for a moment. The companions were surprised by what was happening. A large crowd had gathered outside. They were waving their arms and saying that they had come here knowing that there were ice cubes and wanted to buy some of this ice. They wanted to make deals with the Roll Trade Guild. Edmund Roll told everyone who wanted to buy ice to line up immediately. He would not tolerate any disorder. Roll was surprised because these people didn't even want to listen to anything. Suddenly, a voice in everyone's head shouted, "Everyone be quiet!" Mr. Magic Swordsman appeared in the doorway. The young man told everyone to be quiet in the store. Sol Mudok said that if they started making noise again, he would have to kick everyone out, so they needed to be careful. Edmund said that this guild only sold wholesale. Retail customers would have to leave. The girl was upset because she had come all this way, but the salespeople shouldn't cross the line. Sol Mudok gave the retail buyers a stern look, and they immediately fell silent. Sol Mudok waved his hand and said goodbye to them. Wholesale buyers could line up. The buyers were from the Mage Trade Guild. Benjamin, the butler of the slave family, was also present. Another man said he was from the Arista family. Edmund Roll was happy because he knew he would be able to earn a lot of money, but he did not expect to be so lucky. The man understood that it was all thanks to Mr. Magic Swordsman. Although the guild had not yet been fully restored, if it weren't for the Magic Swordsman, they would not have had such an opportunity. Edmund suggested that Mr. Magical Swordsman take a little break. Now he would take care of everything else so that the young man could rest. Sol Mudok waved his hand and wished him luck. The young man really did decide to take a break from his duties. In fact, Edmund Roll had a compelling reason to revive the guild. It was revenge for his parents and siblings who had died unjustly. Therefore, he had to completely restore the trade guild. Next, he planned to use the guild to take revenge on Duke Icarus for destroying them, with the help of the Akasa Guild. Until that happened, Edmund decided he would not stop. Mr. Roll thought that if he succeeded, he would definitely repay Mr. Magical Swordsman. Sol Modoc lay down on the bed and felt very tired. Sol Modoc thought that things were going well now. He had a lot of money, and it was time to start gathering information about Hua Yun. There was a knock at the door. Sabina asked permission to enter. The girl opened the door, holding a plate of ice cream in her hands. Sol Modoc thought that she was finally here, and it seemed like it was time to eat something. Now our hero began to eat ice cream often. It was a dish made by mixing ice and fruit. It was accidentally invented by a girl named Sabina, whom he had recently met. Sol Modoc thanked her and said he would gladly eat the ice cream. Sabina smiled and wished him bon appetit. Sol Modoc liked this ice cream. It was cold, sweet, and juicy. He could not have imagined that such a taste could exist when he was in the North Sea. The young man had heard that the Roll Trading Guild was popular because of this ice cream. Now he could understand why. Sol Modoc didn't even notice how he ate all the ice cream. He decided that one serving would not be enough. The young man thought that going to get food himself was too much trouble, but there was nothing he could do about it since everyone else was busy. Sol Modoc left the house and was surprised. Why was it so noisy here again? Sabina asked visitors not to do this and to stand in line. One of the young men indignantly asked how she dared to give orders to aristocrats. Another visitor suggested that this girl simply did not know who they were. He demanded that she bring them ice cream immediately. The young man said that they had heard rumors and decided to stop by, so she should be prepared for the consequences if the ice cream turned out to be tasteless. The girl firmly stated that the Roll Trade Guild does not sell ice cream to hooligans. The visitor was outraged at how she dared to tell an aristocrat to stand in line with commoners. The young man said that they already disliked being in the same place as the common people, and now she wanted them to stand in line with them. Did she want to die? Sol Modoc listened silently to this conversation for a while. Sabina said that the ice cream she had made was not something you could get first just because you were an aristocrat. The visitor was again outraged at how she dared to contradict a nobleman. Sabina thought that if something went wrong, the swordsman would save her. The girl said that it was absolutely outrageous. Sabina added that she wanted to explain the rules. The visitor was furious. The young man drew his sword and asked if she really wanted to die. His friend stopped him and told Samuel to calm down, that he should not act rashly. The young man asked if Samuel really wanted to humiliate them. The young man looked intently at Sabina and said that they had come here to eat ice cream. The girl felt his cold gaze on her. She felt as if her heart had frozen. The guy said he didn't like to wait and added that the girl should hurry up and bring the ice cream as quickly as possible. Sabina replied that they would have to wait a little. Edmund Roll approached the young people and said that the trade guild did not sell ice cream to hooligans. The guild leader was surprised that Sabina had forgotten this. The girl apologized. Sol Modoc suggested that there was something between these people since Edmund was reacting so violently. The man told the visitors to leave immediately. Further failure to comply with the above guild rules was unacceptable. The young people responded that this was extremely outrageous. How dare he insult aristocrats? He said that the young people were mistaken. The reason he was not selling ice cream was not only because they had barged in without waiting in line. One of the customers asked what the reason was. The man said that they should ask Duke Icarus about it themselves. The young man was surprised that the man knew his father. The young man looked closely and thought that the man's eyes reminded him of someone. The young man smiled and said that now everything was clear to him. The fallen guild of Roll. The young man's companions were frightened when they saw this smile. It was the same smile that appeared when Justin was angry. Justin drew his sword from its sheath and said that insulting a nobleman was punishable by death. Edmund Roll closed his eyes. He thought that he would not even be able to avenge his family. He was very angry. Suddenly, Sol Modoc appeared in front of Justin and blocked his sword strike. The guild leader opened his eyes and saw a magical swordsman in front of him. Sol Modoc waved his hand and pushed Justin aside. The young man was outraged. How dare he do that? Justin asked if this guy really wanted to die so badly. Sol Modoc wondered why he was bothering with this. After all, he had only come here to eat another serving of ice cream. The protagonist thought that they had simply told the rowdy customer that they would not sell him ice cream, and now he was threatening everyone with violence. It was simply ridiculous. Sol Modoc said that these young people had no manners at all. Justin responded with a curse. Our hero added that he would take the opportunity to teach these young men a good lesson. Justin swung his sword and shouted that this guy would die along with the guild leader. Justin, burning with rage, approached the protagonist and prepared to strike with his sword. Sol Mudak easily dodged his opponent's blows. Laughing, he said that he was not afraid at all. The protagonist dodged the blow once again and said that for such a young age, the guy was doing pretty well. But no matter how much he swung his sword, he would not be able to reach him. Since ancient times, righteousness had been followed by reason, and it was reason that created harmony. If these actions represent the aristocracy, then the aristocracy has no principles. Sol Mudak added that he was not such a narrow-minded person, so today he would personally put this young man's manners in order. Justin was outraged at how this scoundrel dared to speak that way about aristocrats. Sol Mudak declared that it didn't matter what the young man said. Only discipline was needed to learn respect. Justin missed again. The protagonist thought that this reminded him of the Central Plains. He had forgotten how the world worked because of his attachment to Huayun. In the end, the truth was that only the strongest survived. Sol Mudak activated his formless Qui and directed it toward his opponent. The shapeless key in the form of an arrow pierced Justin's wrist, forming a hole in his hand. The young man dropped his sword, fell to his knees, bleeding profusely, and cried out that his hand was wounded. Edmund Roll asked in surprise what that was. Sol Mudak approached the frightened young men. The young men shouted for him to stop, otherwise they could not vouch for themselves. Sol Mudak told the injured man that he needed to lie down. Why was he getting up? Justin took his colleague by the shoulder and told him to step aside. Sol Mudak thought that this guy really had a talent for many things, but if he decided to fight, then so be it. The protagonist said he was curious to see how long this guy could last. Even without a weapon, Sol Mudak was able to throw Justin far back again. The armed young men were frightened. One of them told Justin to pull himself together and not do anything stupid. Justin looked at his hand. The wound was healing and shrinking in size. Charles saw this and said he couldn't believe it. The protagonist was surprised. This guy had only taken one hit. Sol Mudak thought that Justin was weaker than he had previously thought. Should he stop? Our hero knew nothing about this world, so he couldn't just destroy people. Justin asked who this man was. Who was he to behave like this? Didn't this stranger know who he was? How dare this stranger treat him, Justin von Icarus, this way? Sol Mudak looked at Justin and thought that this guy was a real fool. He couldn't even assess the situation and was truly possessed by evil. The armed young men said that this stranger would not get away with mocking a nobleman so easily. Sol Mudak looked at the stick lying nearby and thought it would do. Our hero picked up the stick and said that it was an object taken from the void. As he did so, Sol Mudak's eyes lit up strangely. Justin von Icarus thought that he was looking at a magical swordsman. Sol Mudak held the stick in his hands but activated the power of the sword. Our hero declared that now there would be a sword of trial, and for this, the energy of the sword was activated. The hooligans fell to their knees in fear, and terror appeared on their faces. Sol Mudak swung his arm and said that for people like these, a baton was the best medicine. Sol Mudak carried out his plan and beat the young hooligans with a stick. The victims, kneeling on the ground, admitted that they were wrong and asked for forgiveness. They said they would never do it again. Sol Mudak told them to repeat it because he hadn't heard them for some reason. Justin thought that this stranger could definitely deal with them, so he repeated again that he was wrong. He would never repeat the mistake he made today. Sol Mudak thought that, as expected, a club worked well anywhere. The protagonist told the young men to be extremely careful from now on. Edmund and Charles were surprised by the magical swordsman's behavior. They thanked him. In the palace, the king's subjects reported on current affairs. Count Slave said that a report had been received from a subordinate whom he had sent to the kingdom of Serbia a few days ago. King Tomalov III told the count to continue. The count added that the kingdom of Serbia had managed to regain the Blackstone region in the north, which had previously been barren. In addition, there were rumors that the kingdom of Hyson was going to develop the territories beyond the Sahara Desert. Duke Sergio von Icarus said that it was too dangerous for people to live on the other side of the Sahara Desert because of the many monsters that lived there. Was the kingdom taking any measures? The count replied that he was not sure, but suspected that they might want to lure Ainos to their side. King Tomalov III was very surprised to receive this information. Count Krenz asked if this was really true. Baron Arista asked if they were talking about Ainos, one of the 10 sword masters on the continent. After all, the swordsman had always refused, despite the money he was offered. They say he wanders the continent, never staying in one place. Count Slave did not understand why such a man would go to Hyson. Count Krenz asked if it was not for money, then what was it for? Maybe he had a lover? Count Slave asked who this woman he loved was. Did everyone know her? The count replied that she was the younger sister of the current king of Hyson, Laird II, Princess Daphrin. Had Laird II really given away his precious younger sister? It seemed that the King of Snakes was beginning to take action. This meant that there were now 2 sword masters in the kingdom of Hyzen. Now they would try to expand their territory, which had been established during the reign of Layer I. In the east, the desert nation of Hyzen is expanding its territory, and in the south, the trading nation of Serbia is developing its lands. In addition, the Zeva Empire, located across the sea to the west, is also expanding its possessions. We cannot sit idly by. King Tomalov III asked what they should do. He wants to hear everyone's opinion. Duke Icarus said that it would be good for them to expand their territory. The king pointed out that they had no place to expand. The king asked if the duke meant the other side of the Lazar Mountains, the one to the north. Duke Icarus replied that they had no other choice. The king thought, the northern lands are difficult to develop. Even if they were captured, this part of the earth is useless because of the ice that covers it. That is why everyone is reluctant to move north. It ultimately means being pushed out of the struggle for power over the continent. Sooner or later, someone would be sent north to resolve the issue of territorial expansion. The king suggested ending today's meeting and continuing the discussion on this topic next time. Duke Icarus thought that the Count and His Highness were hiding something. King Tomalov III and Count Slave continued their conversation in private. The king asked if Cotton had made any mistakes recently. The answer was no. The king said that in that case, the Duke was being selfish again. For the past 10 years, he had been sending everyone who rebelled against him to the north. The Count admitted that it was his fault. The king said that this was not true. The Count was the only one of all his subordinates whom he could trust. The king said he had heard about ice cream in the capital. What did Cotton know about it? The Count asked if he was referring to the Roll Trade Guild's ice cream. It was called candy because it tasted sweet, unlike other types of ice cream. The king asked how long the guild's shop had been in business. Count Slave replied that it had been quite a long time. The Count decided that His Majesty wanted to try the ice cream and suggested visiting Roll. The king said that Cotton really knew what he wanted. The Count replied that he was honestly helping His Majesty. King Tomalov III asked when the Count planned to pay them a surprise visit. The children of the Roll Guild asked the magic swordsmen to teach them. They must learn magic. If something dangerous happened to the guild, it would be very useful. Luffy said he would study hard. Sol Mudok said that what he uses is not magic, but martial arts. It is called the Divine Ice Shot. The protagonist added that he couldn't teach the children magic that he himself didn't possess. Sabina said that in that case, they were ready to learn martial arts. The children supported her. Sol Mudok saw determination in the children's eyes to achieve their goals, and remembered his own childhood. As a child, our hero also wanted to be taught martial arts. Sol Mudok thought it was inconvenient to teach someone at a time when he needed to find Hwayon as soon as possible. But these children wanted to protect someone. Moreover, weren't these the children who had helped him when he knew nothing? According to the rules, the protagonist couldn't just teach them the martial arts of the North Sea, but this is a different world. Sol Mudok said he would think about it and suggested they come back tomorrow at the same time. The children left, and our hero thought that he was the same when he was little. It must not have been easy for the teacher. Sol Mudok looked out the window and heard the sound of clanking iron. But why at this time? It was impossible to even rest peacefully. The Count wondered if they could hold out until reinforcements arrived. The attack was aimed at the Count and the King. An unknown figure wearing an undead mask attacked the King with a fire breath. There was a powerful explosion. The King shouted for Cotton to stay safe. The Count approached the King and knelt down. Slave said that everything was fine now. The King was indignant because the Count's hand was injured. The Count said it was not dangerous and not worth worrying about. Cotton thought there was a wizard there. He was mistaken because of the similarity in clothing. The masked attackers decided that no one should be left alive. One of the attackers said he was ready to break the necks of these noble gentlemen. The attackers crept up behind the Count and swung their swords at him. The Count spun around sharply, and the swords of the opponents crossed. Cotton asked whose fate had prompted the villain to come here. The attacker said that these people would soon die anyway, so they were unlikely to find out anything. The Count thought that thanks to magic, the number of attackers had increased significantly. These guys have no intention of letting them live. We can't lose to them. We must protect His Majesty at all costs. The masked men activated their magical attack again. Slave ordered his subordinates to gather and protect His Highness. The villains activated their fire breath again and said that it was too late to hope for salvation. Unexpectedly, the villain's attack was repelled, and one of them lost his mask. Sol Mudok was on a branch of a nearby tree. The protagonist suddenly appeared behind the attacker and said that he just wanted to admire the moon. After these words, the villain was attacked. Sol Mudok suggested that the attackers finish quickly because he was worried that the ice cream would melt. The villain thought he had lost sight of this guy for a second, but he wouldn't let him relax. This guy is quite unusual. The attacker thought that they outnumbered this guy, so victory would be theirs. They needed to deal with the king as quickly as possible and get out of there to avoid any unforeseen situations. The villain told his comrades that he would deal with this guy and they should deal with the king. Sol Mudok looked at his opponent's weapon and said he didn't expect to see such a sword here. That meant he would have to let him play with the North Sea Ice Palace's new toy, the Solon. The protagonist told his opponent not to hold back an attack. This angered the villain even more. The attacker rushed at the young man and declared that this guy would not return alive. Sol Mudok easily dodged his opponent's attacks. The criminal was unable to achieve his goal. Sol Mudok fought back and his opponent flew far back. The king asked in surprise what was happening. The count asked his highness to take a step back. The king looked at the young man and thought that he was the hope of the kingdom. One of the attackers turned to the commander, Captain Morian, and said that they were facing a master swordsman. Sol Mudok suddenly flew into a rage and said that it was all because of these scoundrels. The young man added that his ice cream had already melted in the rain. The masked criminals were surprised. What was this guy talking about? The protagonist said that now he would show them how upset he was about the ice cream. The young man added that he would count to 3. After that, he could not promise that those who remained here would survive. The villains decided that they should not be afraid, that they needed to destroy this guy, and attacked from different sides. The villains approached, and Sol Mudok continued to count to 3. On the count of 3, our hero activated his spirit energy defense, and a barrier was erected. The king and the count couldn't believe their eyes. Who was this young man? Sol Mudok said that he had taken revenge on the enemy for the ruined ice cream. After that, the young man simply walked away. The king told the count that he was giving him 1 hour to find this guy. Guild leader Edmund Roll was surprised to learn that children were being taught magic. The assistant confirmed this. Edmund was surprised. After all, you can't learn magic on your own. Could it be that the children were being taught by Mr. Magic Swordsman himself? The young man confirmed this and added that he also wanted to study magic, like most members of the Merchant Guild's families. But why were only children doing this? The guild leader thought the young man was right, but the magical swordsman already had so much work to do. Edmund reasoned that there were many people in the world who wanted to learn magic, but only a few could truly master it. The children were lucky. Mr. Roll asked where the children learned magic. The guildmaster smiled and thought that the day when the guild would take flight might come sooner than he expected. Guildmaster Edmund Rowell approached the young man with a request. Sol Mudok replied that he did not understand what he was talking about. Edmund said that he knew that Mr. Magical Swordsman was teaching children magic. The protagonist understood what the guild members had been gossiping about. Edmund added that he was sincerely grateful and did not know how to thank the Magical Swordsman for this service. Henry informed the gentleman that he had a visitor. Sol Mudok looked at the guest and saw a young man with eyes full of tears. Sol Mudok told the boy to leave immediately. The young man knelt down and begged the Lord to spare him, Chamberlain. The visitor grabbed our hero by the leg and said that His Majesty had ordered this man to be brought today. Otherwise, he would take matters into his own hands. Sol Mudok said he didn't care about that. Edmund wondered, was this really His Majesty's Chamberlain? The Chamberlain asked the young man not to refuse today's invitation and begged the gentleman to have mercy on him. Sol Mudok said that this guy had been coming here for days and was annoying him. The magical swordsman turned around and told the boy not to come back and waste his time. The Chamberlain continued to cry, kneeling on the ground. The protagonist did not know if this was the key to solving the mystery of Huayon, but he noticed that some things were coming together. The crystal began to glow again. The young man said that in just 3 years they had captured the entire region north of the river. Soon the Central Plains would join them. There was no point in negotiating with these cunning masters of Marima. His interlocutors said that there are times when you have to show your strength. Now is the time to prove that the Ice Palace in the North Sea suppresses its rivals, not only with force. He added that if that didn't work, they would have to demonstrate their power again, and then he would take the initiative into his own hands. Sol Mudok said he understood and agreed with his interlocutor's plan. He added that if they did not cooperate, they would have to attack them. The protagonist thought that on the way to the negotiations, he had met the woman of his destiny, Huayon. That day became the best day of our hero's life. Sol Mudok decided that he should just think about Huayon and not worry too much about such things. However, it was necessary to develop a plan. The children were delighted to see their teacher approaching them. Sol Mudok decided that he needed to think everything through calmly. The king was upset. Had this man refused again? The Chamberlain apologized to His Highness. The king said he was going to thank this man for saving him. The Chamberlain promised to return there the next day. The king asked how many times the young man had already promised this. The king was informed that Princess Eskild wanted to see him. His Majesty ordered the princess to be admitted. He told the chamberlain that he could leave. The princess appeared at the door. The king told Eskild to come in quickly. The princess noticed that the chamberlain had a very unhappy expression on his face. Was something wrong? The king had to tell his daughter everything. The girl was frightened. Was her father all right? Had he been injured? The king replied that he was fine and that she should not worry so much. The princess was surprised. Why had he refused the invitation? His Majesty replied that the young man did not respond to his request. Eskild decided that this stranger was indeed a remarkable person. The princess said that the ice cream recently made by the Roll Guild had become a bestseller. The king replied that he had already tried this ice cream once. The wizard of the Roll Guild who created this ice cream was the one who saved him. The king added that realizing this made him want to get this person even more. The princess couldn't forget the feeling she had when she first tasted the ice cream. The girl thought that the magician who created this ice cream was the very person her father was looking for. Was that really the case? The princess looked out the window and saw children happily eating ice cream. Eskild thought, maybe this time she should try to meet this person herself. Sol Mudok looked at his students. He thought that it had only been a few weeks since he started teaching them, but they were already able to radiate energy. The young man saw the sense in this, since the concentration of energy here was much higher than in the Central Plains. The teacher said that they could stop there for now, because they could now control their mana well. They could move on to the next step. The chamberlain approached the magical swordsman again. Behind him was a girl hiding her face under a hood. Sol Mudok wondered why this man was here again. Our hero was very surprised because the necklace began to emit a bright light again. The girl took off her hood and said she was pleased to meet him. Her name was Eskild, and she was the princess of the kingdom of Drake. Sol Mudok thought he had found her. Princess Eskild looked exactly like Hwa-Yun. Sol Mudok continued his conversation with the princess in a nearby cafe. The girl admitted that she had heard that the young man had saved her father's life. Eskild added that her father had invited the young man to the palace as a token of gratitude. The girl asked in surprise why the young man had declined the invitation. The princess added that she had heard the young man refuse several times without mercy. Sol Mudok thought that even the angry expression on his face and the tone of his voice indicated that it was indeed Hwa-Yun. Sol Mudok replied that he understood and asked when he should come to the palace. The protagonist clarified, after all, the princess had come here to invite him, hadn't she? Eskild confirmed this. Sol Mudok asked her to set a date and time for him to arrive at the palace. Eskild replied that the young man would be expected tomorrow at around 11 in the morning. Sol Mudok promised that they would meet at the appointed time and place. Eskild stood up and said that in that case she was leaving. Our hero thought that if he went to the palace tomorrow, he would be able to see this girl. However, she was a princess, the daughter of the king, the most powerful man in the country. Sol Mudok wondered how he could get close to her and marry her. The protagonist remembered Hwa-Yun's last conversation with his father and how it all ended. Sol Mudok decided that this time he had to plan everything carefully so that nothing like that would happen. For this, he needed Edmund's help. Mr. Magic Swordsman told the guild leader that he wanted to marry Princess Eskild. Mr. Roll decided that the young man had lost his mind. Sol Mudok looked at his interlocutor with such a gaze that the guild leader understood. The young man was not joking. Edmund Roll said that Princess Eskild was the only child of His Majesty's late wife, Queen Swan. She was the only legitimate heir to the throne. Could it be that an unknown foreigner, a warrior without status or position, without a knightly title, wanted to propose to the princess? To become the princess's fiancé, a candidate must be a prince or grand duke from another country, or at least a descendant of a high-ranking noble family in this country. Sol Mudok suggested that if he had the same status or fame, it would be a great help in marrying the princess. Edmund said that Mr. Magical Swordsman simply had to earn it. Sol Mudok said he would try to do so. Mr. Roll was surprised. The guildmaster asked if the young man knew what needed to be guarded in the palace. Sol Mudok asked what exactly. Edmund assumed that his interlocutor did not know and began to search for the necessary literature among the many books. Mr. Roll took out many books and said that these were the basics of etiquette. The guild leader understood that if everything was left as it was and an accident occurred, the guild would suffer damage. Sol Mudok saw that Edmund was radiating energy. The guild leader said that he would thoroughly train the young man. Sol Mudok wondered why Edmund looked so excited. The young man agreed to study etiquette. In the evening of the same day, the training began. Edmund told Mr. Mechnick to sit up straight. Our hero had to listen to lectures all night and all the next day. The protagonist even had to change his clothes to bring his appearance in line with local etiquette. The king was informed that Mr. Magical Swordsman had arrived. Sol Mudok looked at those present and was surprised. Wasn't today the day of the meeting with him? Many sat with dissatisfied looks on their faces. Why were they here at all? Isilde regretted that she had not deliberately scheduled the meeting for such a day. Sol Mudok thought that, judging by her agitated appearance, the girl had not done it on purpose. Justin was surprised and asked his father why this guy was here. Sol Mudok saw Justin and remembered where they had recently met. Justin was angry and cursed at the guest. His father told the young man to shut up immediately. Duke Icarus asked if Justin really wanted to make a fool of himself in front of His Majesty. Justin bowed his head and said he understood. He suggested that his father had his own reasons. The king suggested that this man had been treated badly. Count Slave said he thought so too. His Majesty inquired what had prompted the young man to suddenly accept his invitation. The king added that he was extremely upset. Sol Mudok said there was a reason for this. The young man noted that the Roll Trade Guild currently had a lot of work due to a shortage of workers. Sol Mudok noted that he was the busiest because he had to produce ice. That was why he wanted to prepare the ice in advance and then go to His Majesty. Mr. Magic Swordsman said that today he finally found some free time to accept His Majesty's invitation. The king laughed and said that he had not even thought of such a reason. Ice cream sells like hotcakes, so the young man must indeed be very busy. Sol Mudok said he was grateful to His Majesty for his understanding. The king asked the young man his name. Our hero replied that he had no name. Everyone called him Mr. Magic Swordsman. The king said that he couldn't address the young man that way every time. Isilde suggested that her father come up with a name for this person himself. The girl added that this young man should be given a title. Isilde added that he had saved His Majesty's life. It would be a fitting reward. Duke Icarus said that the princess had an excellent idea. The young man should be thanked for his help. The Duke added that he believed Her Highness's thoughts were truly excellent. Tomalov III said that he could not ignore the man who had saved his life. Therefore, he would grant him a title. The king said that on the evening when he first saw the young man, one word came to mind. His Majesty told the magical swordsman to come forward. Sol Mudok thought that he did not like kneeling, but if it meant he could marry the princess, then of course he would do so. The king said that he would grant the man who saved his life the title of Baron, and along with the name Blizzard. Sol Mudok thought that in the language of this world, this word meant snowstorm. His Majesty added that this would allow the young man to pass on the name to his descendants in the Kingdom of Drake. His Majesty asked Baron Blizzard to stand up. He added that thanks to the Baron, he was still alive, and wanted to thank the young man once again. Sol Mudok said that if something like this happened again, he would do the same thing. Duke Icarus said that Baron Blizzard was the one who saved his life. It would be fair if this man were given an estate befitting his title. The king agreed that this was an unprecedented event for the Baron. However, questions may arise if the Baron receives the estate. Duke Icarus was surprised. Who would dare to oppose the king's order? If such a person were to be found, he would remind them of the importance of His Majesty's order. The king thought that the Duke had a hidden motive for such an action. Those present told the king that they fully agreed with his decision. His Majesty said that in that case, everything was fine. However, he looked at the map and thought, is there any territory that can be given to Baron Blizzard? Duke Icarus said that it was the northern ice lands he had mentioned at the meeting a few days ago. Icarus added that it so happened that they needed a lord to send there. Everything was falling into place. Our hero thought that the name Baron Blizzard and the northern lands went very well together. The young man noticed that he had a good feeling about this. The king understood what the Duke's plan had been from the beginning. Duke Icarus wanted to make this man pay for the damage he had done to his son and his pride. Essel thought, is this the northern lands? After all, it is an icy continent. The girl was upset. Was His Majesty really sending this man there? Baron Blizzard suggested that this man wanted to drive him away because of the incident with his son. Our hero decided not to refuse if he got the land. He decided to use this as an opportunity to strengthen his reputation and reduce the gap in status between them. The guild leader asked if the magical swordsman was really going to the northern lands, where snowstorms rage, avalanches occur, the cold is fierce, and even mana is unstable. The magical swordsman told the guild leader not to worry. He was in good health and would not catch a cold. Edmund was surprised. Was the magical swordsman a Yeti or something similar? Baron Blizzard asked who the Yetis were. Edmund replied that they were a legendary clan that had lived only in the northern regions since ancient times. Outwardly, they resemble humans. But according to legend, they are about 3 meters tall, and because of their height, they are endowed with tremendous strength. They are completely immune to cold and violence. There is a rumor among the people of the kingdom that one inhabitant of the north is equal in strength to 100 inhabitants of other parts of the country. That is why they hate being ruled and do not recognize the existence of leaders. Baron Blizzard said that sounded interesting. The young man added that if he gained the recognition of the northerners, his reputation would rise. However, that was easier said than done. Our hero opened the door and saw the children. What were they doing here? The teacher said that for those who were new to martial arts, the northern lands were dangerous. Sabina said that they still had a lot to learn. If the teacher left, who would teach them magic? Sabina and the children begged the teacher not to leave them. Baron Blizzard looked back and saw Princess Eskil behind him. The Baron asked why the princess was so upset. Eskil said she wanted to talk after the children had left. The protagonist turned to the children and said that they could leave now. The children looked at each other, but remained where they were. The teacher asked what they were up to. Sabina said that the teacher should listen to their request. Leo added that if the teacher agreed, they would leave immediately. Baron Blizzard said he agreed to listen to them. The children were delighted and ran off. The princess remarked that the Baron had very energetic students. The young man replied that they were quite rebellious. Baron Blizzard asked the princess if she felt better now. Isolde said she was very sorry. She had asked her father for the title for no reason. However, it was because of this idea that the Baron was now going to the northern lands. The protagonist thought that Huayan and Eskil were very similar, but he had no idea that they were so similar. Huayan also apologized to him for Dan Chun-hak. Our hero remembered the moment when Huayan told him that it was all her fault. Baron Blizzard said that if he hadn't received this title, he wouldn't have gone north. Princess Eskil repeated that she was truly sorry. The protagonist found the girl very cute. Baron Blizzard turned around and said he had to go. The princess asked how she could calm the Baron down a little. The young man replied that perhaps after he received a good luck charm. Princess Eskil was surprised. What did a lucky charm mean and what was it? Baron Blizzard explained that it was a kiss filled with sincere concern for another person. The princess jumped back in surprise. Judging by the girl's reaction, the young man decided that he shouldn't have said that. In any case, he needed to go and prepare for his departure. Baron Blizzard asked the princess to forget about this conversation. Isolde was angry. What kind of person was he? He just said he wanted to leave, turned around and walked away. Who does that? The girl asked the young man to stop. The protagonist turned around and asked what was wrong. Baron Blizzard thought that maybe he had done something wrong. The princess decided that this guy's behavior seemed familiar to her. The young man said he didn't want to impose on someone who didn't want him to, so everything was fine. It could just be ignored. The girl grabbed the young man by his clothes and pulled him toward her. The next moment, Princess Eskil kissed Baron Blizzard on the lips. After that, the princess blushed with embarrassment, put her hood up, and ran away. The confused Baron Blizzard remained standing in place. The young man thought that he must return after achieving success. At that moment, the crystal on his chest glowed brightly. Princess Eskil continued to run away, shyly hiding her face. Rumors spread throughout the northern city that a new lord was coming. They say he saved the king's life. For this, he was granted a title and an estate. They say that this man single-handedly defeated 100 enemies in an instant. The men continued to discuss this topic while sitting in the tavern. One of them said that this man was a sixth circle wizard and possessed fencing skills that were on par with a master swordsman. His companion was surprised. Why would such a remarkable man come here? One of the patrons said that it was obvious. This man had fallen out of favor with Duke Icarus. The man added that in any case, these were just rumors. The man said that if this person was frightened enough, he would simply run away from here. The hunters, a man and a woman, were in a snowy forest looking for a wyvern. The woman suddenly screamed. She saw the wyvern jump out of the forest and rush at them. The woman managed to fall into the snow, and the wyvern rushed past. The man, dagger in hand, rushed to the girl and asked if Luna was okay. They were just trying to get some viper eggs. Luna saw the wyvern trying to catch up with the man approaching her. She shouted to Jake that there was danger behind him. Jake looked back and saw the viper's huge mouth behind him. He thought his end had come. Suddenly, the wyvern was attacked by a stranger and fell bleeding onto the snow. The stranger asked if they were all right. Luna, holding Jake, thanked the young man for his help. The guy replied that he had simply done what he had to do as a lord. Our hero turned around and said they would see each other later. Before the girl could recover, their savior had disappeared. She noted that this man was very fast. Jake was surprised and said that the wyvern's eggs had also disappeared. The new lord was in the castle. There was almost no one in the room. The young man was surprised. Why was it empty? Didn't everyone know that today was his inauguration? The assistant apologized to the lord and said he would send messengers to every village again. Baron Blizzard said there was no point in doing so. Even if he sent them, it was unlikely that anyone would come. Our hero understood how they performed their duties. Now he guessed why the lords here changed so often. However, the protagonist had his own path. Several days passed. The man from the tavern was angry and did not understand what was happening. Who was it really? Could the new lord have done this? The hunter acknowledged this and added that he was also upset. He did not expect to be treated this way. However, he had to admit the lord's skill. The hunter noted that it was very quick, and whatever method the lord used, he could not even move when the lord touched his sword. His blows were very sharp, and the pain was indescribable. A man entered the tavern and announced that he had appeared and was now in the town square. The man with the bandage on his head said he would go to the town square. Was the lord already there? His comrades said they believed in Max. He had to put an end to this scoundrel. Baron Blizzard stood in the town square and silently watched the townspeople. There were far more people here than he had expected. Luna recognized the lord as her savior and asked, "Was it really him?" Max approached Luna and asked what she was doing there. The girl was surprised to see her father and replied that she had come because she had seen the crowd gathering. Max said that they were all there because the new lord had arrived. Luna remembered the man's words and understood what he had meant. The girl told her father that there was a man who saved her when she was in danger, stealing the eggs of the ice wyvern. Max thought, could the man who saved his daughter really be the lord? Moreover, he had defeated not an ordinary wyvern, but an ice wyvern with a single blow. This was no easy feat, even for a Caroline warrior. Max thought that as a Caroline warrior, he should acknowledge such a man. However, he couldn't back down now. The warrior extended his hand to the lord and said that his name was Max, and he wanted to greet the greatest warrior of Caroline. The young man replied that he was Baron Blizzard, recently appointed to Caroline, and did not consider himself a great warrior. Max said that he had heard rumors about this man. Was it true that the new lord mercilessly beat people? Baron Blizzard replied that he had only severely reprimanded those who tried to rebel. The Baron asked if Max really wanted to end up in their place. The warrior replied that he did not. Max added that he had a proposal. It is very cold in this part of Caroline, so since ancient times, people have been drinking strong alcohol to cope with the cold. Max asked if the new lord was ready to compete with him in drinking. Baron Blizzard replied that he agreed. Max told the lord to think carefully and make the right decision. It is a very strong drink, capable of rushing blood throughout the body. The Baron replied that he did not care. Baron Blizzard noted that if he won, Max would recognize him as his master and follow him unconditionally. Those around them thought the Baron had completely lost his mind. Who would agree to bet with Max on a drink? Max agreed. Witnesses gathered around the table. The opponents sat opposite each other. There were many mugs of alcohol on the table. Max said that if the lord wanted to give up, it was not too late to do so. Baron Blizzard said that as a lord, he could not break his word. It was time to begin. Max was determined and warned the Baron that he would not regret his decision. After a while, a significant number of mugs on the table were empty. Zemyak asked Max if he was okay. It seemed as if Max had just lost consciousness. Max raised his head and said that he was the best drunk in Caroline. Luna asked her father to stop drinking. Max looked at his opponent and realized that his vision was blurry. Baron Blizzard said that they would continue. Max didn't understand why the lord was still fine. Baron Blizzard said that his opponent should just give up. Max said he would continue and had no intention of giving up. Those present watched Max anxiously as he tried to drink another mug of alcohol. They also looked at Baron Blizzard, who drank another mug without much effort, as if it were ordinary juice. The lord put the empty mug on the table and said he felt perfectly fine. Perhaps it was because he hadn't drunk alcohol in a long time. Max couldn't hold on and fell off his chair. He was completely drunk and couldn't move. The townspeople were surprised. This couldn't be happening. Had Max really passed out? Baron Blizzard rose from his seat and said that in that case, everyone present should gather at his castle in exactly 5 days. The lord declared that he wanted to see which of them could keep their promises. At the appointed time, the bridge was lowered and the passage to the lord's castle was opened. Lord Blizzard sat on his throne and observed those present. The young man looked at the townspeople and said that he had assumed they would not come. However, the local people were good at keeping their promises. Max said that this was self-evident. The lord added that he was very pleased. Baron Blizzard assumed that everyone knew who he was, so he wanted to get straight to the point. He gave the people 10 days to prepare for the move. The protagonist was surprised. Why couldn't he hear any answers? Luna asked if the lord really wanted them all to live in this castle. The Baron said he had been misunderstood. Would there be enough room for all the residents in the castle? The young man asked who told them they would live here. Baron Blizzard added that they were now moving north. Over the past 5 days, our hero had wandered around the area and found a good place in the north. At least 10,000 people could live there. Max said that this was where groups of ice cannibals lived. The Lord asked, "Are you talking about those bald guys with bear-like bodies who walk on 2 legs?" Max was surprised. Had Lord Blizzard actually encountered them? The protagonist said that not only had he encountered them, but he had destroyed them all. The Baron added that there was no need to worry. He had prepared everything for the move and found a really great place to live. After the meeting, everyone began to disperse to their homes. The protagonist thought that everything was going according to plan. Someone greeted him from behind. The Lord turned around and saw Luna and Jake in front of him. The young people introduced themselves. Baron Blizzard assumed he knew why they had come. He was just about to call them himself. Jake was surprised. Why did the Baron need them? Blizzard said not to worry, it was nothing important. The Baron told the young people to just follow him. Luna and Jake were extremely surprised when they saw what the Lord showed them. They were baby ice wyverns. Luna said she had guessed as much. The Lord had stolen the eggs for this very purpose. How could he do such a thing when they had worked so hard to obtain them? Baron asked who had saved them that day. Blizzard asked everyone to be quiet as the cubs were sleeping. The Baron said that at first he thought about raising them himself, but they turned out to be noisy. Plus, they eat a lot. Luna said that it was useless to take these hatchlings away. Once they hatched from the eggs, they would recognize the first person they saw as their mother. The protagonist was surprised to hear this. The Lord asked if he should continue to raise these annoying and troublesome creatures. Jake disagreed that wyverns were annoying. Luna said that ice wyverns are larger and more powerful than ordinary ones, and that the Lord has the opportunity to tame them. Jake said that if he were Baron Blizzard, he would tame the wyverns, because they could easily fly to Tenston. The Lord asked where this place was. Luna replied that it was the second capital of the Kingdom of Kaya, located 1,000 kilometers west of Karelin. It was a place where there was literally nothing. The Baron was surprised. Is it really possible to fly so far on wyverns? Jake replied that the round trip would take about 2 hours. The protagonist asked how he could tame a wyvern in that case. Luna was surprised. Had the Lord changed his mind? Baron Blizzard said he had a great idea. A few days later, the people of Karelin began a great migration at the behest of Baron Blizzard. The girl approached the teacher and said that people were having a hard time. The protagonist thought that everyone was exhausted after 3 days and nights on the road. Baron Blizzard believed that there were still people who did not trust him and were hesitant. Our hero knew that they would soon reach their goal, and then the hearts of these people would change. The Lord told everyone to listen to him carefully. Blizzard said that they were almost there. Even if it was difficult for everyone, they had to trust him and hold on a little longer. The old hunters said that they did not know where they were going. They were not even sure that there really was no ice cannibal there. Baron Blizzard reminded them that he had said he would defeat them all. The Lord hoped that people would believe him and understand. Baron Blizzard added that everyone would understand, but only when they got there. In the end, they all ended up in the very place the teacher had mentioned. The protagonist admitted that it took some time to find this place, but he hoped that everyone would like it. The young man realized that the others were finally feeling better. They didn't know that such a place existed in Karelin. The Baron told everyone to listen carefully. Once upon a time, this place was a refuge for ice cannibals, but now they would live here. The Lord added that if they were going to live here, it would be logical to give this place a new name. Everyone unanimously supported this proposal. The protagonist thought that he used to live in the Northern Ice Palace, so they should choose a name similar to that. Baron Blizzard declared that from now on, this place would be called White Castle. Our hero thought that now all that remained was to take the wyvern cubs away and place them in a free space. Suddenly, a strange sound rang out. The protagonist looked in the direction of the sound and realized it was ball lightning. The wyverns couldn't stand the sound and fell to the ground unconscious. The young man with the ball lightning in his hands was surprised. Where did the wyverns come from? The protagonist was surprised. Where did the wizard come from? Baron Blizzard approached the wizard and attacked him with ice magic. Blizzard grabbed the wizard by the throat and said he wouldn't ask twice. Where did he come from and who was he? Our hero asked why the wizard had attacked his wyverns. At some point, the wizard felt paralyzed. His body was completely immobile. The Baron said that this man's lineage was not paralyzed, so he could speak and must answer honestly. The wizard said his name was Count Jerome von Karen. The wizard guessed that he was the very same Blizzard who had saved His Majesty's life and received a title and lands. Our hero was surprised. Did this man know about him? The Baron asked if he was by any chance the same former lord who had been appointed here and then expelled. Count Jerome von Karen said that he had his reasons. The protagonist said that this young man was looking down on him in vain. Kerwin remarked, "Now that the Baron knows about him, aren't they on the same side?" The protagonist grabbed the young man by the head and said that they were not equals. The Count was equal to his dog. He had not fulfilled his duties and should have simply renounced his title. Baron Blizzard said that this time he would punish the Count with a special servant, so there was no point in even trying to fight him. Baron Blizzard added that if Count Kerwin continued to speak ill, he would have to be destroyed. The Count assured him that this would not happen. Blizzard told the wizard to heal the wyverns and leave. Count Jerome Kerwin was surprised. Did he really need to heal them? The protagonist said he was confident in his ability to understand people. If this guy used magic, then he could be useful. Count Jerome Kerwin thought that something had gone wrong this time. The young man asked, "Did the Baron really want him to send a letter to the capital?" The protagonist clarified, "Was it really that difficult to send a letter to the Queen?" The Count was surprised. Hadn't the Baron said to send a letter requesting exemption from taxes? Blizzard confirmed this. Right now, this place is too busy trying to make a living. The Count said that other nobles would be against it because, from their point of view, it was unfair. If this bill were passed, would they threaten His Majesty with non-payment of taxes, claiming that their conditions were no better? Count Kerwin added that no matter how much His Majesty the King favors the Baron, he will refuse. The protagonist wondered, are the nobles really the problem? At the center of it all was the man who had sent him here. Baron Blizzard said that perhaps they would postpone it for a while. The Count breathed a sigh of relief. Baron Blizzard showed him a large number of papers that needed to be processed and said that the Count would find work. Countess Kerwin replied that she would do her best and trust Baron Blizzard. The Baron told Count Kerwin to start preparing immediately. Armed warriors began to gather at a certain place. Jake asked why their leader had gathered them so unexpectedly. Luna said that she had come fully armed, but why had they been gathered here? Baron Blizzard said he would explain everything now. From now on, they would go hunting for ice wyverns. Their goal was to obtain ice wyvern eggs. The Lord said that for safety reasons, they would be divided into teams of 30. They must focus on stealing the eggs. Even one would be enough. The Baron added that if the mission is successful, the warriors will receive an additional reward. The winning team will receive an extra 100 gold coins. The warrior said that this was a huge sum, one that he could never have earned in his entire life. Could they really receive such a reward? Carolyn's warriors couldn't believe that the Baron would be willing to pay so many coins. Blizzard said he never makes empty promises. The main thing is for the warriors to complete the task. The Baron told Count Jerome Kerwin that over the next 10 days he would be watching each team and looking for useful guys. Later, these guys would be used for other purposes. Jerome asked, was the Baron thinking of creating a knightly order? Baron Blizzard thought, did he say something wrong? After all, every lord has at least one order of knights. They say that the Lion Knights of the Duchy of Icarus are especially powerful. They are so strong that they would not lose even in a battle with the Royal Knights. The protagonist thought that this time he would make his army bigger and more powerful than the Snow Ice Squad because he couldn't lose Huayan a second time. Baron Blizzard announced to the soldiers that they were going on an expedition. The Ice Wyvern was very aggressive. The warriors attacked the Wyvern from all sides. Each of them wanted to receive the reward for the eggs. Max shouted for the second squad to immediately pull the net. The net was thrown, and the Ice Wyvern was trapped. Baron Blizzard said that the attack looked good. Count Jerome noted that the warriors had been hunting for several days, and now their hands and feet would work in a perfect sync. Jerome thought that it would never have occurred to him to steal an Ice Wyvern egg and raise it from infancy. If all went well, they could make a lot of money transporting and selling the spoils of the hunt, such as skin and bones. They would be delivered to distant cities by Ice Wyverns. Count Jerome imagined Ice Wyverns unloading at seaports. Baron Blizzard praised everyone. If there were many Ice Wyvern eggs after this hunt, everyone would receive a great reward. After these words, the warriors continued the hunt with even greater enthusiasm. Jerome thought that by uniting the unruly warriors of Carolyn into a single entity, amazing things could be achieved. As expected, the Ice Wyvern was destroyed. A warrior named Storm had a hand in this. Baron Blizzard said it was quite good. The Lord asked who this guy was who had just defeated the Ice Wyvern. Jerome said that he was the real Storm Shorta. Judging by the fact that he even had a nickname, he must have been quite famous. He was a hero of the common people who raided the homes of evil nobles and distributed their wealth to the common people. This guy was caught in a trap and imprisoned, but he managed to escape. The protagonist thought, judging by how Storm gets along with the locals, he seems like a decent guy. Jerome said that they might find someone else who could be quite useful. Baron Blizzard told the warriors that they had done an excellent job. Thanks to the hard work of all the participants in the wyvern hunt, they managed to collect a sufficient number of ice wyvern eggs. The Lord added that he would definitely give them their reward as promised. Max noted that they had brought the ice wyvern eggs as promised. But why were they needed? Blizzard understood that everyone was curious as to why he had suddenly asked them to collect wyvern eggs. He would explain everything now. After hatching, ice wyverns accept the first person they see as their mother. In fact, this is how they can be tamed. The Baron announced that he plans to use the tamed ice wyverns as a means of long-distance transportation. Loaded wyverns will be able to deliver goods to any point in the country. Max asked what kind of goods they would specialize in. Blizzard replied that the first thing would be ice ogre leather. Max and the other warriors were surprised. Did the Lord really want to send them to their deaths? The Baron asked who, in their opinion, had gotten rid of the ice ogres that had been swarming around this white castle for so long. Blizzard said he would not allow the warriors to become food for the ice ogres. The warriors understood that the situation was now definitely different from before. Jake and the others felt a surge of courage. They declared that they would follow their lord. One of the warriors told the teacher about the misfortune that had befallen them. The warrior said that Sister Sabina was feeling very ill. The brothers tried to help the girl and cover her with clothes to prevent her from getting cold. Sabina had a fever and thanked Luffy for his support. The younger brother and sister told Sabina to hang in there, assuring her that the teacher would come to her aid soon. Baron Blizzard did indeed appear and said he wanted to examine Sabina. The girl admitted that she was very cold. Blizzard realized that the situation was more serious than he had previously thought. The Baron asked the children what had happened to Sabina. Luffy explained that while helping Mr. Osborne find a place to build a pen for the baby ice wyverns, they discovered a huge flower field full of ice flowers that they had only seen in books. Sabina wanted to show these flowers to her teacher and picked them, thinking that Baron Blizzard would like them. They returned with the flowers and Sabina, exhausted, fell to the ground. After that, she lost consciousness. Luffy asked the teacher what they should do now to calm the children down and prevent anything bad from happening. The protagonist took the ice flower from the girl's hand. He looked at the plant and thought, "Isn't this a snow flower?" So these were the ice flowers the children had told him about. The protagonist realized that this was the only elixir of the North Sea in the Central Plains. How could these flowers have ended up in this world? The teacher told Leo to take Sabina in his arms and follow him. They had to hurry and go to the training ground. The young people went to the training ground. Leo carefully laid Sabina on the couch. Blizzard announced that he would begin treatment immediately, so children were strictly forbidden from approaching the ward until permission was granted. The protagonist thought that in this world, the snow flower was called the ice flower. In this world, it is known as the mysterious flower, which emits only cold air. But in the North Sea, where Sol Mudok lived, the fruits of this flower are an unsurpassed elixir. Due to the extreme cold, it can be difficult to harvest the fruits of this flower. However, for our hero who is well-versed in ice ki, this is not a problem. The protagonist thought that Sabina had fainted because her ice ki was not strong enough to withstand the cold. Our hero put the fruit of the ice flower in the girl's mouth and called her name. Sabina opened her eyes and looked around in surprise. How did she get here? The teacher said that when the girl finally woke up, she should sit up straight and try to direct her ki. Sabina, with her eyes closed, began to do what the teacher asked of her. Blizzard noticed that the cold ki in the girl's body was perfectly condensed into internal energy. All this happened without any side effects. Sabina, exhausted, lay down on the couch again and simply fell asleep. The protagonist thought that her internal energy had increased significantly compared to her previous state. The effect was better than expected. If this continued, it would be possible to increase the intensity of the training. Before Sabina woke up completely, it would be necessary to visit the field of flowers together. After a good rest, Sabina woke up and asked where her teacher was. After collecting the ice wyvern eggs in the White Castle, a large-scale reorganization began. First, Sol Mudok checked the list compiled by Jerome and organized his elite knights, the Baran Knights Squad. Baron Blizzard said he would not say much, but would simply make these warriors his knights, the Knights of Baran. Short, who showed the best results in all aspects, was appointed captain of the squad. After that, with the help of Sol Mudok, schools and hospitals were built. Restaurants, bars, shops, and other establishments were also built. Sol Mudok also rotated people into positions according to their talents. Osborne was appointed to the White Castle Security Service, and Jerome became the protagonist's assistant. Jerome said that his mission was to teach magic to others. In addition, 2 armed groups were created. The Guard Squad is responsible for guarding the outer perimeter of the White Castle. They will also conduct reconnaissance throughout the region and return stray residents. The other group is the Knights of the Wyvern. Jake asked his lord to assign this group to him. Blizzard told Luna that the secret was that he himself was the head of the first squad. Luna would perform his duties. Several days passed. Jerome was behind schedule and thought he should ask my lord to lighten his load. Jerome entered the room and apologized for being late. Max said they had just started. Jerome saw Sabina and was surprised. Why was she here since she had been sick just recently? Baron Blizzard told his assistant to sit down quickly, as they had very little time. Osborne continued his report. The young man noted that not much time had passed since the formation of the guard squad, but there were already more than 20 people in prison. The problem was that more than half of them were fugitives who had come from outside. Max told the Lord that they were clearly criminals. They all needed to be arrested and put in the castle so that they would no longer cause trouble. Jake supported this idea. Blizzard noted that in that case, they should be arrested first, as the main instigators of the uprising, which led to the unjustified expulsion of such a capable former leader as Jerome. Max said that was completely different. It was self-defense to protect Coeurlan's autonomy from the central nobility. Max realized he was wrong and apologized to Nightstorm for his words. Storm expressed his hope that Max would never forget the reasons for the suffering of ordinary people. The Baron was surprised. How could Max be so short-sighted? He asked if there were any other opinions. Sabina asked if she could express her opinion. The girl noted that the village had developed a negative public opinion about fugitives. Sabina added that the hunt for cannibals was starting today. Blizzard was surprised. What did that matter? The girl asked why, in that case, the people in prison should not be put at the forefront of the hunt. Blizzard thought it was a good idea and told the girl to continue. The hunter informed Captain Short that they might have lost him. First-class fugitive Gregory and Captain Gregor Short were on the front lines. First-class fugitive Lennon was also with them. Captain Short agreed. Once they were far enough away, they would conceal their presence and attack as usual. An armed ice ogre was moving along the snow-covered path. Gregory and Lennon attacked the ogre from behind. The ogre was wounded and bleeding, fighting back with a club, but was destroyed. Sabina suggested putting those in prison at the forefront of the hunt. Osborne asked if she really wanted to use them as human shields. It seemed like a last resort. She said that if the teacher went with them, it would be much more humane than keeping people in prison. The teacher did not waste human resources unnecessarily. After the attack, Captain Short asked Lennon if he was okay. Lennon replied that it had been a bit risky, but they had managed. Schwartz and Gregory laughed. The captain said it was a crisis similar to the one that had occurred in prison when he threw down his pickaxe. Lennon noted that this was a chance for them to start over. Baron Blizzard thought that people's opinion of criminals would definitely change. They had become more united through cooperation. The young man was glad that his student Sabina had suggested this solution. A huge creature watched the people, hiding behind a tree. The hunter commanded the squad, coordinating their actions. The young man said that there was no need to rush, that they should approach the trap slowly. The masked hunter announced that he was going to fire several arrows, so everyone should be ready. The arrows flew from the bow, but they all hit the tree. The young people saw that there was no target in the area of impact. The archer explained that he had heard the rustling of leaves and mistook it for an enemy. They needed to retrieve the arrows and check other places. Suddenly, a huge monster appeared from behind a tree. The hunters were stunned. Baron Blizzard told his assistant that the people of the duchy were no longer afraid of the ice ogres. Osborne acknowledged this. Now all the people are full of energy. Jerome said that it was all thanks to the Lord's leadership. The Lord noted that everything was going according to plan. Jerome must instruct everyone not to act rashly. The ogre was destroyed. Osborne asked Jerome if they were still studying monsters other than ogres and wyverns. Jerome noted that some information still needed to be systematized. A warrior from the front line informed Osborne that everyone had survived, but had been seriously injured and was being treated in the hospital. Blizzard asked Osborne what was going on. The assistant replied that they seemed to have a problem. A monster had appeared that was different from the ice ogre. The soldier said that 2 of them had been attacked by this monster. It was definitely not an ogre, but a different biological species. Its entire body was covered with white fur, and it was incredibly huge. Baron Blizzard told Jerome that the hunt was over. Jerome was surprised. Did the Lord plan to go there alone? The protagonist admitted that he would have to act on his own. Our hero thought that if the warrior's words were true, then this monster was someone he knew. Our hero had already heard the explanation from Edmund Roll. The guild leader had once mentioned the Yeti. Saul Mudok activated his inner vision and scanned the area. A huge snowman was in this area. Saul Mudok activated his sword, approached the Yeti, and attacked it. Fear was visible in the eyes of the huge monster. Saul Mudok thought that this time the attack had failed. The Yeti was very large and fast. The Yeti was defending its territory, so it did not retreat and showed extreme aggression. The protagonist wondered why the creature, which had been roaring just a moment ago, was now behaving like a frightened cat. It seemed to have sensed the strength of its opponent. This could be seen in its animalistic gaze. Out of curiosity, our hero wanted to spare its life, but he could not show mercy to someone who had harmed his people. In its next life, the Yeti must be born human. Sol Mudok did not understand what had happened. There was a flash of light, and his opponent disappeared a moment before the blow. Sol Mudok remembered that when he came to this world, Luffy told him that warp magic could be used by magicians of the 5th level and above. However, most do not rise above the 1st or 2nd circle. It turns out that the 5th circle is something like a spiritual or earthly level. At the same time, a humanoid creature covered in white fur used such powerful magic. Our hero decided that he had to catch the Yeti no matter what. Sol Mudok thought that this creature was very large, but it ran away like a rat. The protagonist sensed the Yeti nearby. Even teleportation did not help it get far. It was definitely somewhere nearby. Moving forward, Baron Blizzard discovered a deep cave in the forest. The young man descended into the cave and realized that he was in an underground archive in the middle of a snowy wasteland. The protagonist saw the Yeti sitting on the floor and asked what he was doing there. The Yeti was frightened and told the man not to come near him. Blizzard replied that there was no need to be afraid, he would not harm him. The Yeti said he was the great warrior Huari Condal. Jerome appeared behind our hero. He explained that they were looking at a snowman. Blizzard said that Jerome had arrived just in time. Jerome noticed traces of destruction. Only Baron Blizzard could leave such a trail behind him. It was the destruction of nature. The Baron asked why the snowman, a scoundrel of an ancient legendary clan, was here. Jerome was just about to ask him that. The protagonist asked Condal where he came from. The Yeti remained silent. Blizzard asked if he was going to try to escape again. Blizzard reminded the Yeti to answer and not test his patience. Condal replied that he was from Glac. Blizzard asked if it was his village. The Yeti silently lowered his head. The protagonist asked Condal to explain why he had attacked his people. The Yeti said he had not attacked. He was a great warrior of Huari and did not attack people without reason. Jerome noted that the snowman was not lying. According to his observations, most of them had been seriously injured, but none of them had died. Blizzard remembered that the warrior had said that everyone was alive but wounded and in the hospital. There were indeed no reports of fatalities. Condal stated that the people had invaded sacred land, so they had to be driven away. He never attacks first. Blizzard realized that while hunting ice ogres, they had invaded the territory of the Snow People. Edmund had reported false information about the Snow People. The Baron told Jerome to heal Condal's wounds. Jerome approached the snowman and said that it would be a little uncomfortable now, but it would not last long, and then it would be fine. Baron Blizzard asked Condal to show him the sacred land. He will order his people not to go there anymore. Baron Blizzard noted that Condal could not address him informally. The protagonist thought that someone who couldn't speak properly couldn't be expected to do anything else. Jerome reported that the rehabilitation process was complete. Condal was now completely healthy. Jerome said he would like to ask the Lord for something. Edmund Roll asked Henry how much time had passed since the promised deadline. Henry replied that it had been about 3 months. Edmund took off his hat, clutched his head, and said that in that case they were finished. Henry was surprised. Was the trade guild really ceasing its activities? Edmund said that the magical swordsman promised to wait 3 months and would definitely send ice. The guildmaster noted that there had been no news since then. Henry was surprised. Had that really been said? Henry told Edmund to calm down. The magical swordsman was not the kind of person to break his promise. Suddenly, a huge flying monster appeared in the sky. Edmund and Henry were very frightened. It was an ice wyvern. The men backed away and, unable to keep their balance, fell to the ground. The wyvern landed next to them. Sabina was controlling the animal. She greeted Mr. Edmund and said that a delivery of fresh ice had arrived. Edmund said he believed in Mr. Magic Swordsman. Henry was surprised. Was it really an ice wyvern? It was a monster whose strength was equivalent to that of an entire army of knights. Could the magical swordsman really be using them to deliver crushed ice? Henry wondered what was happening in the north and what Mr. Magic Swordsman was doing. Sabina remembered and said that the teacher had asked her to give something to this man. The girl took out an envelope with a letter. Her Highness Princess Isil was having her morning tea. The young man thanked the princess for accepting his invitation. He said that Her Highness was becoming more beautiful every day. Isolde said that Justin was too kind to her. Justin thought that the princess was still straightforward. She didn't even try to put on a fake smile. However, pleasure can only be achieved by fighting for what you want. Justin decided to just wait and then see a smile on that indifferent face. A maid approached the princess to report something. The assistant said that a letter had been received from Baron Blizzard. Princess Esselt rose from her seat and said she had to hurry. Justin was surprised. Was the princess really leaving? He had come here in the morning to see Her Highness. The girl said that one day was clearly not enough for fencing practice. Justin should not waste any time and return as soon as possible. The princess, accompanied by her assistant, retired to the palace. Justin was angry because Baron Blizzard had interfered with him again. The princess unfolded the letter and immersed herself in reading. The young man asked the dear Princess Isolde how she was doing. Everything was fine with him thanks to the lucky charm she had given him. The girl blushed with embarrassment as she remembered their only kiss. Baron Blizzard reported that the northern lands were a wonderful place to live. There were dazzling crystal caves and warm water from hot springs. It was warm inside the caves all year round. A city called White Castle had been built there. The Baron added that it was indeed a beautiful place, but there was one omission. Princess Esselt was not there. The young man sent the princess a small gift to express his longing. An icy flower appeared in the girl's hands. Blizzard said he would write to her again. The princess did not understand what was happening to her. Why did she keep thinking about this man? The girl looked closely at the ice flower. Esselt said she had to check everything and see for herself. Before sending the letter, the protagonist enchanted the ice flower. Our hero was sure he could break anything he wanted. It's hard to control the creation of such small details. Suddenly, Jerome approached. He said that the gentleman should go straight to the office. A great discovery had been made, and he wanted to show him something. Baron Blizzard was surprised when he saw what it was. Could it be the library of an ancient wizard? Count Jerome was surprised. Why wasn't the gentleman happy at all? After all, it was a huge discovery. Jerome added that it was the legacy of an ancient family, the cornerstone for the revival of forgotten magic, and an opportunity to go beyond the fifth circle and so on. The Baron said he felt some kind of energy and asked Jerome what he had up his sleeve. Jerome replied that he didn't want to bother the gentleman with trifles. It was just a useless thing. Blizzard took the small bag from Jerome and said that people always become curious when they see something hidden. The bag contained crystals. Jerome explained that they were just stones that sometimes glowed. The assistant added that he had not tried to hide them on purpose. They were mana stones, which contained compressed magic. Baron Blizzard asked what was so special about these stones that Jerome decided to hide them. Jerome replied that he was now a fourth circle mage. He had almost reached the fifth circle, but had been unable to advance any further for a long time, so he thought the stones would help him. The Baron said he understood the young man. It was not easy to overcome such a barrier, so he understood how Jerome felt. Count Carowin thanked him for his understanding. Baron Blizzard added that this was precisely why it was completely unacceptable. Jerome was surprised. Wouldn't strengthening his abilities benefit Carolyn? The Baron acknowledged that with the Mana Stone, Jerome might be able to advance further. But what would the young man do next? Run off in search of the next Mana Stone? The speed of transition to a new level is not the main thing. The Baron added that the pursuit of true understanding is much more important. Growth is achieved through hard work and time. There are no shortcuts. Jerome thought that, as annoying as it was, Baron Blizzard was right. After all, he had reached the fourth circle on his own. The protagonist tried to calm the young man and said that magic does not tolerate haste. He must proceed slowly, step by step, and he will achieve everything. Jerome said that at some point he began to forget his grandfather's teachings without even noticing it. Blizzard thought that fortunately the young man understood everything himself. Blizzard asked what else this stone could be used for. Jerome replied that it was suitable for almost any kind of magic, to enhance mana, create barriers, or cast connection spells. Blizzard was surprised. Did that mean that even a mage was not needed with a mana stone for communication? Jerome confirmed this. The assistant explained that if a communication spell was cast on the mana stone, even a person without magic could use it to communicate. This specimen was first-rate. With a stone of this level, it was possible to establish communication even with the Zeba Empire across the sea. Baron Blizzard said that the most important thing in governing a country is the speed of obtaining information. Whoever collects and transmits information faster dictates their rules. The Baron added that Jerome should immediately turn all mana stones into communication stones. After the appropriate magical effects, the stones could be tested for connectivity. Baron Blizzard was pleased. The audibility was excellent. While testing the stone, Blizzard asked how far away Jake was. Jake replied that he was currently flying over the plain 10 kilometers from the White Castle on an ice wyvern. The young man reported to his lord that the connection was excellent and without interference. Blizzard also confirmed that the signal was clear and there was no interference. The communication stone test was successful. The Baron said that from now on, they would maintain communication using this stone. This was another technological revolution. The Baron ordered Jake to turn around and return. Jake replied that he would now perform a triple pike with a twist. Blizzard told Osborne to increase the range of the checks as soon as Jake returned. Jerome became concerned that his lordship might break the communication device by testing it excessively. Sabina ran up to the teacher and reported that she had returned, flying here on a wyvern. During the meeting, Baron Blizzard read the letter Sabina had brought from Edmund Roll. The protagonist said he had asked for information about the political situation in neighboring countries. Edmund did a great job. However, the name Enos mentioned in the letter gave Blizzard a strange feeling. The Baron asked those present if the name Enos meant anything to them. Storm Short said that, according to rumors, it was a Grand Master of the Sword. Everyone present became alert. Now objected, isn't a Grand Master of the Sword higher than a regular master? There should be no one above the level of Master of the Sword on this continent. Blizzard called for silence. In the Central Plains, a Grand Master of the Sword is said to have reached the realm of enlightenment. Such a person can create a physical manifestation of a sword. What a disappointment that only about 10 people here have reached the level of sword aura. Life without worthy opponents is terribly boring for a warrior. Blizzard thought that a master of the enlightenment level had appeared. Even if he is not equal to our hero, the protagonist wanted to meet him, the strongest in this world. Storm Short added that he had heard something strange. They say that when he fights, he emits the scent of blooming plum blossoms. Our hero was surprised. Could it be sword mastery with the fragrance of blossoming plum trees? This is a technique of the Hua Mountain sect. Only they are familiar with this practice. The protagonist thought, could he be the only one? Could someone else from the Central Plains have come to this world? At that time, Sol Modoc was busy uniting the Central Plains. The Hua Mountain sect, a sword exuding the fragrance of blossoming plum blossoms. It is a beautiful sword. The protagonist told his opponent, who was encased in ice, that they were on different levels. Our hero's rival was Zhang Pengjin, the head of the Hua Mountain sect. Zhang Pengjin told our hero that if his disciple had been here, everything would have turned out differently. Sol Modoc asked if he was referring to the one who had escaped from here a few days ago. The sect leader replied that his disciple had not escaped. Zhang Pengjin noted that he had disappeared during solo training, as if he had vanished from this world. Sol Modoc thought that at the time it seemed like a silly excuse. Could that person really be here now? Jerome asked if that was all that was in the letter. Blizzard replied that there was nothing particularly important here, except that the kingdom had sent an inspection. Everyone present was very alarmed. An inspection was the last thing they needed. Jerome asked the Lord if this was a reason to panic. Blizzard said there were only two reasons for an inspection visit: a royal visit or the arrest and execution of traitors. Jerome said that in any case it was necessary to prepare and asked when the commission would arrive. Baron Blizzard replied that it would be this afternoon. In other words, they had already arrived. The young men looked out the window and saw that the inspection team was indeed already at the gate. Even the knights were there. The knight told the Lord of the White Castle, Baron Blizzard, to come down immediately and receive the inspection. The knight was Justin, the son of Duke Icarus. Baron Blizzard said that he and Justin hadn't seen each other in a long time and asked if the knight's arm was all right. Justin expressed anger and hid his hand behind his back. The protagonist was surprised. How did this commission manage to get downstairs? And why is Justin leading it? Could he really be plotting treason? Baron Blizzard said that there was no need to hide anymore. Princess Isil could come out. Her Highness was indeed behind the knights. The princess said that Lord Justin had stopped threatening them. Princess Isolde asked Baron Blizzard how he was doing. The princess was amazed by what she saw. The Baron said that this was the very crystal cave he had written about. Isil said it was breathtaking. The princess announced that she wanted to see the hot springs. The Baron suggested that she follow him. The inspection arrived ostensibly for a royal inspection, but it happened immediately after the princess read the letter. Esil begged her father for permission to come here with the group. The Baron said that the princess was as persistent as ever. The Baron reminded her of the talisman, referring to the kiss, but the princess immediately interrupted him and said that the subject was closed. The girl blushed again with embarrassment. Sol Modoc thought that even in such small things, she was exactly the same as in her previous life. Our hero had been through a lot, fighting and conquering the world for revenge for Huayan. He had come a long way and finally met her here. Her appearance may have changed, but the fact that he was with Huayan again was happiness enough. The girl was delighted when she saw the hot spring. She said it was very beautiful. Sol Modoc hugged the princess and said that she was even more beautiful. The young people's eyes met. The young man said he had missed her very much. In a burst of tenderness, our hero called the princess by the name Hua Yun. Essel was surprised. What does Hua Yun mean? Who is she? Solmudok was frightened, apologized, and said that it just slipped out. The princess said that she liked the Baron's gaze. She felt warmth in his directness. However, today she finally understood something. The princess said that Baron Blizzard's affection was for her. Could it be about that woman, Hua Yun? The Baron wanted to explain something, but the princess said he didn't need to say anything. There was no need to assert himself. She understood everything. For a moment, our hero was speechless. Eskild and Hua Yun. Even if he told her about reincarnation, she still wouldn't understand the feelings he had carried through the years. At that moment, a stranger hiding behind a tree pulled out a knife and rushed at the protagonist from behind. Justin called out to Arbin and asked how it went. He asked if the ambush had been successful. On the snow, among the bloodstains, lay the very crystal that our hero wore around his neck as a necklace. Justin stood over the body of the night guard with his bloodied sword. The girl looked at him with fear. Justin apologized to the princess for his late visit. Isilde was frightened and tried to hide in the next room. However, Justin kicked the door down, and the princess fell to the floor, flying to the side. Justin approached the princess and said that her highness had been rude. The young man said that the princess had dismissed his feelings and then fallen for the first man she met. The princess was indignant and told Justin to try repeating that. Isilde said that Justin had caused a commotion over such a trifle. Baron Blizzard would not let it go. Justin said that the princess was still thinking about him even now. Justin told the princess that Baron Blizzard was already dead. The cunning young man explained that he had sent a group of elite assassins after the Baron. Essel closed her eyes in fear, but when she opened them, Baron Blizzard was standing in front of her. The young man asked if the princess was hurt. The girl replied that she was fine, but how was the Baron feeling? The next moment, the Baron jumped sharply to the side. An enemy sword flew past him. Blizzard was surprised. Could his opponent really wield a sword using ki? The Baron pulled the princess close and said that it was Justin's doing. It seemed that he had prepared carefully. A knight in armor appeared before the young people. Duke Icarus asked his son if he wanted to finish off Blizzard. Justin asked his father to let him use an elite group of assassins, because they were capable of eliminating even a master of the sword. Duke Icarus said that would not be enough. His father added that if Justin intended to destroy this man, he needed to prepare properly. A sword appeared in the Duke's hand, which was controlled by the owner's mana, creating magical armor. Now Baron Blizzard dodged this sword and had to save the princess. Justin laughed with joy when he learned that this sword could destroy even a Grandmaster swordsman. After all, everything looked different now. He said that it was even good that those killers had failed, because now he himself would finish off Blizzard. The princess was afraid for the Baron. Our hero told the girl not to come near. She had to stay in a safe place. The protagonist told Isilde to hide and not worry about him. He would be back soon. When they met, our hero said that Justin had changed since their last battle. However, he was still unremarkable. Justin said that these were empty lectures again, and drawing his sword, approached his opponent. He thought that the Baron was exhausted after fighting the mercenaries. The perfect chance to destroy him. Justin was unable to defeat his opponent, just like last time. The Baron attacked him, and Justin received the same wound as before. Justin cried out in pain, grabbed his arm, and fell to his knees. Our hero used his unique abilities and said that at this distance, Justin would not be able to harm Princess Essel. Justin was outraged. Did Blizzard deliberately pretend to be wounded to lure him away from the princess? The Baron said that a cornered beast is dangerous. Even a mouse will bite a cat if it is pressed against the wall. The protagonist said that a rat like Justin dared to attack Essel. There would be no forgiveness for that. Justin rushed at his opponent and said that Blizzard should not underestimate him. Our hero replied that he always exercises caution and attacked his opponent using his unique abilities. During the confrontation, Justin found himself on his knees in front of his opponent. He was losing on all counts. Justin didn't understand what was happening. Why couldn't he gather his mana? Blizzard said that Justin's attempts were futile. His Dantian was destroyed. From now on, Justin would never be able to use mana again. Now he was useless. Justin became angry and shouted in despair. Of course, he did not expect such an outcome. The protagonist slapped his opponent across the cheek, and he flew to the side. That was all it took. Our hero told the young man lying in front of him to spend the rest of his life in repentance. Blizzard added that now Justin would learn what it was like to be weak. He looked at the sun hiding behind the mountains and said it was too late. It was time to go back. Our hero thought that Princess Essel was waiting for him. Justin's plan had been thwarted completely and irrevocably. The criminals were behind bars. Baron Blizzard told Jerome that this was how he dealt with ringleaders. He still couldn't believe that he now had problems with mana. Our hero thought that all that was left for him to do now was to meet Princess Isolde. Björn saw the princess and Jerome talking together. The princess was holding the young man's hands. Our hero was surprised. What was going on here? 15 minutes earlier, Baron Blizzard said that was great, it must be somewhere around here. The Baron said that everyone was starting to search. Whoever found it first would receive a generous reward. Jerome asked if this was where the Baron had been ambushed and lost his precious pendant. Blizzard confirmed this. Jerome said he had found out everything. They were experienced killers. How did the Baron manage to fight them off? Blizzard admitted that the killers moved quietly, but overall they were weak. The protagonist added that if he had been in better shape at the time, he wouldn't have gotten a single scratch. Jerome replied that he was certainly impressed. The princess approached the young people and said that the Baron had lost his necklace because of her. The protagonist was surprised to see the princess nearby. The girl was very sorry and said that if they had rushed to search for it right away, they might have found the necklace. The princess added that this was impossible because she had been sent to rescue someone. Blizzard said that it was not the princess's fault. Our hero angrily said that only the scoundrel Justin was to blame. Jerome can confirm this. Princess Isolde was very surprised to see Count Jerome von Kruin here. The princess asked what the Count was doing there, as she had heard that he had disappeared. Jerome understood that Her Highness was very happy, but such a warm welcome made him a little uncomfortable. Count Jerome was at a loss and did not know how to behave in front of Baron Blizzard. Blizzard put his hand on the Count's shoulder and asked if they were quite close. The princess said that my lord had misunderstood. The Baron said that he understood perfectly well. The maid suggested that the princess clear up the misunderstanding. Blizzard asked Jerome, who did the princess respect the most? Isel confirmed this. Jerome was indeed an outstanding person. Count Kruin was an aristocrat who cared about the people. She was sorry when he was exiled to this remote place. It was painful to learn that he had disappeared. The Baron wondered why Jerome had not told him about this. The Count asked, who brags about their good deeds? The Baron asked why the princess was speaking in the past tense. Eskild replied that now she knew the Baron. The girl became embarrassed, turned around, and said that she was going to look for the pendant. The princess stopped when she found herself alone in a small clearing. The girl noticed that the very same pendant was lying at her feet. The princess picked up the crystal and said that it was the very thing the Baron was looking for. The crystal lit up again. The princess said she would inform the Baron immediately. The princess thought, judging by how the Baron looked at the time, the pendant must be connected to that girl named Hua Yun. The maid said that the princess now had the same expression on her face as Baron Blizzard. She added that the princess should not rush into anything. The Baron surely thought about her as much as she thought about him. The crystal continued to glow. Isilde was jealous at first, but now she was just curious. What kind of woman could have won the heart of such a wonderful man? The princess returned the pendant to the Baron. The crystal shone even brighter. Dan Chunhak said to immediately remove the flower that bloomed in the name of true love from him. He called it nonsense. Behind the warrior, his daughter Hua Yun sat on the floor. He said she already had a fiancé. Dan Chunhak told Hua Yun to stop distracting herself with such nonsense. It was better to prepare for the wedding he had arranged. Hua Yun said that her father should open his eyes. Lovers who made the lotus of love bloom are blessed as true soulmates. The girl asked, even after seeing such a miracle, does her father still insist on a political marriage? Hua Yun said that for her father, the alliance was more important than his own daughter. The girl added that her father had once abandoned her mother for the sake of an alliance. Now he was doing the same thing to his daughter. Dan Chunhak ordered the guards to lock Hua Yun up. She must not be allowed into the ice palace until the wedding. Keep a close eye on her. Hua Yun thought it would be better if she did not return. Princess Isilde decided it was a dream. The girl looked out the window at the dawn. A new day was beginning. The princess found herself near the hot springs again. She was accompanied by her maid. Isilde wondered who the woman in her dream was. Baron Blizzard asked the princess what had happened to her. The princess said she was fine and asked how long the Baron had been there. The girl added that the Baron had nothing to worry about. She was really fine. Blizzard suggested that the princess take a short trip with him to take her mind off things. The trip was to be on an ice wyvern. The beast was already approaching. The princess was surprised, and the maid was frightened. The wyvern was truly enormous. The princess said excitedly that it was a real ice wyvern. Isilde added that she had never seen so many tamed ice wyverns at once. The Baron explained that they had been trained since birth and were very friendly, so there was no need to be afraid. Jerome told the Lord that everything was ready for departure. Jake was to pilot the aircraft. A small white fluffy animal appeared in front of the girls. Jerome said that he did not want to scare the princess. It was a yeti named Condal. The princess was surprised. Could this really be the legendary people of the snowy plains? Isilde picked up the fluffy creature and said she never would have thought they were so small and cute. Jerome was glad that the princess liked the animal. Baron Blizzard let Jerome know that he was very pleased with his work. Earlier, the Baron had said that the princess might be frightened when she saw the Yeti. Could Jerome make it smaller with his magic? The Count replied that magic was not all powerful. The princess continued to play with the delicate creature and call it very cute. Baron Blizzard told those present that it was time to move on to their destination. The flying vehicles were ready. A wyvern named Lilith was harnessed and ready for takeoff. The Baron mounted the beast and told the princess to join him. He held out his hand to her. The ice wyverns flapped their wings and began to gain altitude. The flight proceeded normally over the snow-covered forest. The princess held tightly to the railing. It was her first time experiencing this feeling, and she was scared. However, she understood that nothing would happen to her because the Baron was nearby. Baron Blizzard suggested that the princess open her eyes and look ahead. Isilde opened her eyes and was stunned with surprise. She had never seen anything like this before. The girl saw the sun rising above the horizon. Below her were thick clouds. The princess said it was incredibly beautiful. Jerome asked if the girl felt better. The princess thought that the Baron had been taking care of her all this time. When they met, Louisa said that he should have warned her in advance. Blizzard asked how he was supposed to contact her from such a distance. The Baron told Louisa to pass on all the trade information to Jerome. Blizzard added that he would have lunch with the princess at a local restaurant. Jerome had to finish everything before his return. The princess went out onto the veranda, looked ahead, and was once again struck by the beauty of the surroundings. The Baron said that he had prepared this especially for the princess and asked if she liked it here. The answer was positive. The princess said that she thought she had seen the flower in the Baron's pendant somewhere before. Isilde remembered her dream in which the woman had a flower similar to this one. Blizzard asked the princess if she was all right. The girl replied that she was just lost in thought, remembering a strange dream she had had the night before. The princess explained that there were people in unfamiliar clothes and houses she had never seen before. She was in her early 20s, a girl with pale skin and dark hair, with calmness in her eyes. However, in that dream, her face reflected sadness, because she was in love with one man, but her father was trying to marry her off to another for political gain. Isilde said it was a very strange dream and smiled. The girl added that in the dream she was desperately calling out to someone. She kept repeating one word, Gaga. Our hero was extremely surprised. Only one person called him Gaga. It was Hua-yun. The princess asked if the Baron was okay. What was wrong with his face? Blizzard, clutching the crystal in his hand, apologized and said he had been lost in thought for a moment. The Baron said that the food was getting cold and suggested that the princess start eating. Isilde said she had one request. Every time the Baron called her princess, she felt a distance between them. If the young man didn't mind, could he just call her Isilde from now on? The young people finished their meal. The plates on the table were empty. Jerome entered the tavern and said that he would finish his business with the Tenstin trading house. The young man also asked if the food was to her liking. The princess replied that she had never heard of the word Tenstin before. Is there such a place in the kingdom of Drake? Blizzard explained that Tenstin was not located in Drake. The Baron added that it was a city in the kingdom of Gaia. The princess was surprised again. The kingdom of Gaia is a powerful state in the northwest of the continent, ruled by queens for many generations. It is even called the country of women. The Royal Knightly Order of Gaia, consisting exclusively of women, is particularly well known. In terms of strength, they are second only to the Knights of the Zeba Empire. Isilde thought that they had achieved a lot, but she did not expect that it would come to Gaia. The princess wondered, would her arrival cause diplomatic complications? The princess told Sir Jerome to continue. The Count reported that they were currently supplying Gaia with ice ogre skin, which was in high demand there. Louisa noticed this and suggested opening a Carolyn workshop here and establishing direct trade, bypassing customs duties. Blizzard said that the leather was already selling well. Was there any point in manufacturing products? Jerome explained that the queen sits on the throne in Gaia, and most of the nobility are also women. If they start making clothes and bags that suit their tastes, it will set a fashion trend and significantly increase profits. Labubas made from leather could also be used. Louisa said she knew leather craftsmen from Carolyn. If the Baron agreed, they could start right away. Blizzard thought that appointing Louisa as the head was the right decision. The Baron promised to get the necessary raw materials and said that they could begin. Jerome thanked him for allowing them to continue their activities. Their leather is so popular that everything sells out on the day of delivery, Suddenly, there was an explosion in one of the houses behind the square. Jerome reported that it had occurred near their warehouse. If the wind changes, the flames could spread to neighboring buildings, he added. Blizzard said he would check everything and instructed Jerome to stay with the princess. The Count asked, "Isn't the Lord going himself? It's very dangerous." Yahello said she would go with the Baron. Blizzard replied that it wouldn't take long and that he would be back soon. Everyone should stay where they were. The princess told the Count that they couldn't just sit idly by. They had to go there too. One of the women was in despair. Her shop was on fire. She had devoted her whole life to it. The townspeople shouted that more water was needed. Was anyone still inside? The Baron arrived at the scene and thought the flames were much stronger than they had seemed from a distance. Blizzard noticed that Eskald and Jerome were also nearby. The princess admitted that she was too worried and couldn't stay put. The protagonist couldn't blame her. He would have done the same. Cries for help came from inside the fire. Could someone still be inside? Baron Blizzard, without hesitation, rushed into the burning building. Moving forward, our hero activated his divine ice palm, spreading ice blocks in front of him. The young man saw a girl lying unconscious. Obviously, this was the person he was looking for. Blizzard realized that she was still breathing, which meant she was lucky and needed to be saved. The young man hoisted the girl onto his shoulder. Jerome looked at the master's abilities and said that it was ninth circle ice magic. The Baron came out of the frozen building, carrying the unconscious girl on his shoulder. Late at night, in a private setting over a glass of wine, the assistant reported to Her Highness that signs of rebellion had been discovered. The next moment, the girl found herself in bed. What had happened to her? The girl got out of bed and went into the next room. Young people were sitting at the dining table. Lucia saw that she had woken up and asked how she was feeling. The girl looked around and asked where she was. Louisa replied that it was the Carolyn Company. The girl had heard earlier that this company had become popular because of its leather trade, but why couldn't they recognize her? She asked if anyone here was from the Kingdom of Gaia. Lucia replied that they were all from the village of Carolyn, located in the north of the Kingdom of Drake. That was why the company had that name. The girl asked who her savior was. Lucia replied that Baron Blizzard had saved her. The protagonist was silently eating his food at that moment. The girl approached the Baron and thanked him. The stranger gave her name, Schiller McMahon. Lucia was surprised. It can't be, Jake asked who she was. Lucia explained that Princess Schiller was the second princess of the Kingdom of Gaia, who had reached the level of Master of the Sword at the age of 25. She now heads the Royal Order of Knights and is the most prominent person in the kingdom. Lucia apologized for her rudeness to Her Highness. Jake also apologized. Isil thought, of all people, did she have to meet a foreign princess? If the girl's identity was revealed, it could turn into a diplomatic scandal. Schiller said she would personally award a prize for saving her life and invited Lord to accompany her to the palace. Blizzard replied that he would have to decline as he had to return home. Lucia thought that such a refusal could end badly. Refusing a royal reward in the Kingdom of Gaia is considered a huge insult. Gaia said that her lord was nervous in front of Princess Schiller. Gaia asked how the princess had ended up in the burning building. The princess replied that it was Baron Dayton. Schiller thought that she had supported him until that moment, and he dared to try to destroy her. This coward was afraid to face her face to face, and therefore tried to poison her. The building was set on fire to make sure she was definitely dealt with. Princess Schiller said she had to repay her for saving her. The Baron could name his reward. Blizzard said that it looked as if it was the princess who wanted something from them. The princess was indignant. Was the Baron mocking her? Blizzard suggested that the girl might be hungry since she hadn't eaten since yesterday evening and invited the princess to eat with them. The princess tried the food and noted that it was quite tasty. But why did the Baron refuse to accept a reward? If he hadn't been her savior, she would have thrown him in prison already. The princess looked to the side and noticed a sword standing near the wall. Schiller asked what kind of sword it was. Baron Blizzard replied that it was his weapon. The princess decided that this man knew how to wield a sword. He seemed to be an aristocrat with knightly experience. As the captain of the knights, the girl was curious to know how well he could wield a sword. Schiller McMahon suggested that the Baron fight her after dinner. Everyone present was extremely surprised, except for the Baron himself. The protagonist said he refused because he did not fight those who were weaker than him. The princess was indignant. Could this really be about her? Did this man really not know that she was a master swordsman? In the past, foreign knights had refused to fight her simply because she was a woman. It was not easy to get them to agree. Schiller said that the Baron was probably afraid of losing to her. Everyone present became alarmed again. How could anyone say such a thing to the Baron? Blizzard rose from the table and suggested that the princess go outside. The protagonist said that in that case, He would have to teach the princess a lesson. Schiller McMahon declared that the duel would be conducted according to the rules of chivalry. Auras were forbidden, and the first to incapacitate their opponent would be the winner. Blizzard replied that he had no objection. Jerome asked the Baron not to forget that he was facing Princess Gaia. Any scratch could lead to international conflict. Schiller asked if Baron Blizzard was ready for sparring. The princess had met many such people, but they had all fallen before her. Schiller eagerly awaited the moment when Baron Blizzard's face would contort. In the first few seconds, the princess attacked her opponent. The Baron easily parried her attack. Schiller noted that her opponent had parried a sudden lunge, so he wasn't bluffing. The princess attacked again, and again the Baron parried her. Blizzard felt confident with a sword in his hands. The opponents exchanged glances several times, but the duel of looks led to nothing. Each of them was calm and confident. Schiller thought that her opponent, almost without moving, parried all the attacks of the swordmaster without the slightest effort. The princess decided that this man was incredibly skilled and went on the attack again. The Baron decided to act differently and moved a considerable distance away from the princess. Our hero thought that his opponent was behaving like a master of the penetrating spear style who had attained enlightenment. She unleashed a frenzied flurry of continuous attacks. If he only parried her attacks, everything around him would be reduced to ruins. Our hero approached the princess and decided it was time to end it all with one blow. The Baron lunged forward with his sword, causing the princess to lose her balance. She couldn't hold on and fell to the ground. The princess's sword was knocked aside. The Baron held his sword to her neck. Blizzard's victory was obvious. The Baron told Schiller to admit defeat. The princess demanded a rematch. Jerome noted that both opponents had fought brilliantly and suggested returning to the building to continue the meal. There was still warm pie left. The princess said that if the Baron did not agree to a rematch, she would send an official protest to the Kingdom of Drake. Jerome thought anything but that. Isolde wouldn't want that either. Blizzard said that the ability to admit defeat is part of a warrior's valor. The princess of a great power is now behaving like a child. Schiller was indignant again. How could anyone say such a thing about her? The girl flew into a rage and declared that this man knew nothing at all to say such things. To cool the princess's ardor, the Baron again pointed his sword at her. The princess fell to her knees and thought that she had indeed lost, not even noticing how her opponent had moved. Blizzard asked, "Is this how saviors are treated in the Kingdom of Gaia? Did it not occur to the girl that he might have been holding back because she was a princess?" The Baron suggested that the princess think carefully about which of them had behaved unworthily. The princess wondered, why couldn't she defeat this guy? Would she really have to accept defeat? Schiller remembered her childhood. She was delighted when she took first place in the fencing tournament again. Her mother said that her daughter was a miracle. When she grew up, she would be able to protect her and her sister. The girl was told that she would become the Sword of Gaia. She had been that sword her whole life. Defending the kingdom, she became someone no one dared to contradict. She tried her best to achieve this. Schiller looked at the Baron and wondered who this man really was. Blizzard told the princess to choose her opponents wisely from now on. The Baron suggested that Isolde take a walk around the city since they were returning to Carolyn the next day. Leaving the battlefield, the Baron told Jerome to buy a few more swords. Schiller asked Jerome if the woman next to the Baron was his wife. Jerome replied that she was not. Jerome added that he could not reveal all the details, but that the girl was a noblewoman from a distinguished family. Schiller McMahon realized that these young people were not yet married. The princess told Louisa to prepare the carriage. She was returning to the palace. Schiller thought that since becoming a master swordsman, she had met someone stronger than her for the first time. She had to remember that name, Blizzard. The girl wondered, if she had met such a person earlier, would she be different? Upon returning to the palace, Schiller instructed her trusted people to find Baron Dayton. The Baron was found dead in his own basement with a note in his hand. Judging by the text, his family had been taken hostage. The bottom of the sheet was torn off. Probably it contained the name of the person who had ordered the killing, which the killer had destroyed after the deed. Continuing her search for the person behind the assassination attempt, Schiller found neither clues nor a name. But there was one suspect. The maid reported to Her Highness that Princess Schiller had arrived. Rowan McMahon, the first princess of Gaia, said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Schiller told her what had happened to her the day before. Rowan was surprised. Could Baron Dayton have been behind the attack? Schiller added that he had poisoned her wine and then started a fire. If that man hadn't saved her, she would most likely have died. Rowan McMahon ordered Baron Dayton to be brought to her immediately. Schiller said there was no need. The princess noticed that when she reached the Baron, he was already dead. Most likely the person who had tried to kill her was simply covering their tracks. Rowan hugged her younger sister and said she was very sorry. Rowan admitted that she had been too careless, thinking that if Schiller was a master swordsman, then she would be fine. The main thing was that she was still alive. Schiller thought her sister was upset that she had survived. Although all the evidence pointed to Rowan, Schiller refused to believe it without solid proof. Schiller wondered what Baron Blizzard would have done in such a situation. Schiller remembered that Rowan was going to travel with the delegation to King Drake's birthday celebration. Her younger sister asked if she could go in her place. Rowan was surprised because Schiller always avoided such events. Rowan asked if the person who saved her sister was in the kingdom of Drake. Her older sister asked if Schiller wanted to see him. Schiller blushed and replied that this was not the case. 3 days had passed since Blizzard and Eskel returned from Tenstan to Karelen. The Baron feared that the ice flower and the tamed wyverns might be discovered by the enemy. For security reasons, diplomatic meetings and receptions were moved to the castle that had been used previously. The day of Princess Essel's departure had arrived. Time had flown by quickly. A lot had happened since then. Jerome said that Schiller would soon launch an offensive. It was necessary to strengthen the troops as soon as possible. Jerome repeated that Schiller was about to attack. It was necessary to immediately begin implementing the plan and to strengthen the army. Princess Esseld admitted that she was also worried. Isilde added that Schiller was, after all, the princess of the kingdom of Gaia. It could all turn into a diplomatic scandal. The protagonist thought that he had seen this many times before in the Central Plains. The proud gaze of a true warrior. Schiller was not one to talk about this in vain. Baron Blizzard told Princess Eskel not to worry. In any case, victory would be his. He was sure that Schiller McMahon understood everything. The young man said that if anything happened, the princess could use this to communicate. He handed the girl a box. Inside the box was a communication stone made of mana stone. Blizzard explained that the latest version of the operating system was installed in this stone. With its help, messages could be transmitted without the help of a mage, even while in the dungeon. The distance between Drake and the White Castle was no obstacle for this gadget. Eskel was surprised. Was such a thing really possible? Blizzard said that the princess could contact him at any time. He was always available for her. The maid informed the princess that the carriage was ready and it was time to leave. Braun noted that the world did not yet know about such stones. They had to use it secret when no one was around so that insiders would not see it. In case Justin was up to something, Jake would watch over the princess from the air using the ice wyvern. The princess thought that this thing was not simple. Just like the handwritten letter, the Baron's actions and words revealed his attitude towards her. Princess Essel thanked Baron Blizzard for everything. The Baron noticed that the bear figurine on the princess's suitcase looked better than the Labubu. The protagonist thought that he was now just a Baron. There was an insurmountable gap between him and the princess, like between heaven and earth. Solmudok decided that he needed to rise up to earn the right to be by her side. Our hero said that it was time to visit that very place. The Baron and the Count descended into the dungeon. Jerome said he didn't understand what was going on here. The mage asked who all these people were. Blizzard replied that they were the ones who had tried to destroy him. He was referring to the mercenaries who worked for Justin. They had all been captured. Jerome asked if Justin knew about this. Blizzard suggested that Justin was unaware and believed that they had all died. The protagonist locked these people up without food to see how long they could last. Only 10 days had passed. Our hero thought that compared to the mercenaries of the Central Plains, the skills and endurance of these people were insignificant. The Baron's gaze fell on 2 of them who seemed at least somewhat worthy. Blizzard told Jerome to bring them food. The protagonist thought it would take time to get anything out of them. After receiving food and water, the prisoners immediately began to satisfy their hunger and thirst. Jerome asked why my lord had spared their lives. The Baron replied that he planned to turn them into a squad of killers. The Count was surprised. Why would the Baron need that? Jerome asked if his lordship was going to set them on Gaia before the invasion. Was the Lord plotting a rebellion? Jerome couldn't understand what Baron Blizzard was thinking. The mage asked the Baron if this wasn't too much. Ice wyverns and assassins? The inspection went smoothly only thanks to the princess. Next time, they could be accused of treason. As she said goodbye, the princess asked the Baron if he would come to His Majesty's birthday celebration. The protagonist told Jerome that since the king's birthday, he had decided to enter the political arena. Our hero decided that if Esseld was a princess, then he needed to become at least a duke. To do this, he would have to face many enemies. In this regard, the creation of a squad of killers is a necessity. Our hero asked Short, "Is the Blizzard Knight Order assembled?" The answer was yes. The commander of the Blizzard Knightly Order, Short, added that he had gathered all the warriors on the orders of his lord. The Baron said he was giving the assassins 2 choices: become his subordinates or die right now. Blizzard added that at the moment they were too weak for his army. The Baron said that an intensive training program had been prepared for them. Those who agreed could take the weapons behind him. Blizzard said that knights were waiting for them outside. They must be destroyed. 3 weeks passed. The confrontation in the forest continued. The mercenaries and knights clashed in a desperate battle when they met. One of the mercenaries fell and was attacked by a knight. The knight triumphantly raised a brooch with a stone. The knight said that one was ready and today they would have a well-deserved dinner. The defeated mercenary was sent aside to rest for a while. Baron Blizzard watched the events from the top of a tall tree. The protagonist thought that 3 weeks had already passed since the knights and assassins began training together. The rules were simple. Participants were given emblems. Capturing or breaking an opponent's emblem was equivalent to death. Defeat came when one side lost all its emblems. At first glance, everything seemed simple, but nothing teaches better than competition. The losing side would be left without dinner, so no one would slack off. Both sides needed training, and everything was going well. Baron Blizzard noted that the knights had won again. Jerome cast a tracking spell on all the assassins. If anyone left the designated area, an alarm would sound. The Baron appeared before Miller and said that this was his 10th attempt to escape. After all, there had been a warning that the next time would be the last. Miller said he didn't have time to play these games. Another assassin appeared near Miller and dealt with the fugitive. The captain of the assassins, Baker, apologized to the Lord and asked him to be generous to this man. Blizzard asked Baker why Miller was so determined to escape. The captain replied that the man wanted revenge on his enemy. Miller was different from those who became assassins for money. When he was a child, someone killed his family, leaving only the boy alive. Miller had received information that the culprit would be attending a celebration in the capital the following month. The Baron remembered the princess's words and realized that she was talking about the king's birthday. Blizzard said that on King Drake's birthday, the security would consist of several hundred mages and knights. Did Miller really think he could take revenge and remain unnoticed? Miller asked if the captain had told his lord everything. The mercenary added that he existed only for revenge and did not care about his own life. The main thing was to destroy the enemy. The Baron said he believed him, but Miller would not be able to get close to the enemy, let alone take revenge. It would be useless. He would simply die like a dog. Baron Blizzard said that as an aristocrat, he could attend the celebration. Miller asked what the Baron was getting at. The protagonist said he was offering a deal. He would help the mercenary get revenge. In return, Miller would become his loyal servant. The young man was surprised. Why him? There are many assassins better than him. My lord explained that Baker had said that no one but Miller had reached the level of a top-class killer by the age of 25. The Baron added that he also highly valued Miller's potential and believed that he could become even stronger. The Baron said that this was precisely why he needed Miller in his squad. Would the young man agree to the deal? Miller replied that if he could get his revenge, he would agree to anything. Blizzard said that the young man should get ready. They would be leaving in a few days. Sabina entered the room and said she had a proposal for the teacher. Would my lord like to try some ice cream? The Baron said he would be happy to do so. Sabina added that in that case, they should hurry before the ice cream melted. Miller wondered, who was this girl to the Baron? Duke Icarus was furious. Could his son really have lost even with such an incredible artifact? Duke Icarus thought that Blizzard continued to get on his nerves. The Duke summoned Roxlin and asked if he could handle the Baron. Roxlin told the Duke not to worry. He would definitely be able to stop Blizzard. The protagonist practiced the speech he would soon have to deliver. They needed to move 6,000 residents of the new territories from outside the city of Tot to Corellon. Did they really only have 6 ice wyvern eggs? Max, the captain of the White Castle Guard, said that the Baron had accurate information. Max asked when the residents would be relocated. The Baron replied that he would deal with Jerome later. There was something more important to do. Baron Blizzard said he didn't know what to give King Tomalov III for his birthday. Those present looked at the Lord in surprise. Blizzard was surprised. Why such a reaction? The Baron said that the gift should be better than the gift from Duke Icarus. Did anyone have any suggestions? Max suggested giving the king the hides of ice ogres. They are popular among merchants, and with winter approaching, the king would be delighted with such a gift. Blizzard said that was too simple. Osborne suggested giving flowers. The Baron was surprised. Who did they think he was? Osborne explained that he meant ice flowers, special flowers that only bloom in Corellon. Jerome said that these flowers only grow in extreme cold and are unlikely to be cultivated in the capital. Short said that in that case, they had no choice but to give it as a gift. Bron Blizzard asked what they were talking about. Suddenly, Jake ran into the room and said that he couldn't do it anymore. All the roads were blocked. Baron asked him to explain what he meant. Jake said that he was talking about Roxline. Until now, they had been paying unfair fees for travel and road use. However, now the roads were completely blocked. The Baron was surprised. Couldn't they go around or fly over on ice wyverns? Jake replied that wyverns had weight limits, so they needed to travel by land. Jerome said that to get from Carolyn to the capital, you had to cross the city of Tot. Since they don't know about the ice wyverns there, they must have blocked the land routes. Blocking the routes before the festival only for the aristocrats meant that their goal was probably to prevent the Baron from visiting the city on that day. Blizzard said that Roxland might be hiding something. Why is he trying to block the roads? Blizzard suggested that Viscount Roxland had strengthened his position with the support of Duke Icarus. Justin had recently returned home, so it was likely that his father was behind all this. Blizzard said they had no other choice. If they were being provoked, there had to be an adequate response. Jerome asked if my lord was thinking of a territorial war. The Baron replied that it was literally a war between landowners. As long as they did not violate royal laws, even the king could not intervene. However, to start a territorial war, it is necessary to inform the king. It is also necessary to officially declare war on the enemy. The war could only be undeclared if it ended faster than the news could reach the king. In that case, it should only be reported after the enemy was forced to surrender. Blizzard thought this was the perfect chance to test what they had prepared. The Baron told Short to leave only minimal forces in the territory and prepare for departure. The protagonist said that the assassin squad would remain on standby for now, and that Miller should be sent to scout the city of Tot. Blizzard told Jake to prepare the Wyvern squad for departure. Jake, of course, was surprised. Jake said that there were only 20 men in the squad. Wasn't that too few to participate in a war for territory? The Baron asked if Jake was really the commander of the Wyvern Knights. Blizzard asked if even after being so close to the Wyverns, Jake still didn't trust their power. Jake said that the commander was right. The Wyverns were not weak. Now they would show their rivals their full strength. The Baron told Jerome to prepare an announcement about the start of a war against the tyranny of the people of Carolyn and the blocking of the roads. Jerome replied that he refused to do so. The mage said that this was a gamble with an unknown outcome. You can't risk people's lives too recklessly. Jerome said that Viscount Roxland was still holding 6,000 unevicted citizens hostage. If they attacked first, the hostages could be in danger. Moreover, the forces of the city of Tot outnumber those of Carolyn tenfold. If Tot receives the support of Duke Icarus, Baron Blizzard will find himself in an even more difficult position. The protagonist said that before his rivals could respond, he would end the war in 2 days. Jerome stated very convincingly that this was practically impossible. Blizzard reminded him that Jerome was a strategist and should not show doubt in front of his troops. Jerome thought, could the Baron exceed his expectations and work another miracle? The Baron ordered a vivre for Lilith to be prepared for him and addressed the soldiers, declaring that they were declaring war. The bound prisoners were moved across the square one by one, guarded by guards along the way. One of the prisoners asked what they were accused of. The knight struck the prisoner in the neck with his spear and said that he was acting on the orders of the Viscount to arrest everyone from Carolyn. The assistant reported to the Viscount that all the inhabitants of Carolyn had been detained as ordered. The assistant added that the merchants who used to gather at the castle gates no longer appeared. The Viscount said that these fools had finally understood. He would not open the gates. Without food supplies from outside, Carolyn, bound by ice, would not survive. The mountainous terrain made it impossible to reach the capital without passing through Tot. The inhabitants of Carolyn were most likely starving. The Viscount added that a meeting of the nobility would soon be held, which everyone was required to attend. If Baron Blizzard did not appear at the king's birthday celebration, he would lose his title. Roxland said that in that case, he would be able to capture Carolyn. The Viscount thought it was a perfect plan. Roxland noted that going against Duke Icarus, whose power was greater than the king's, was tantamount to treason. If everything went according to plan, he could receive the title of Marquis. The Viscount looked to the side and noticed someone's shadow flit by. However, there was no mistake. A huge shadow had indeed appeared outside the window. What could it be? The window shattered and Roxland saw a huge wyvern in front of him. But they only lived beyond the ridge. Where did it come from? Baron Blizzard, riding the wyvern, asked the owner, "Is your name Roxland?" The Viscount asked our hero who he was and demanded that he immediately give his name. The protagonist replied that he was Lord Caroluna. The Viscount realized that he was Baron Blizzard. The protagonist threw a scroll at Roxland's feet. Blizzard said that it was a declaration of war and added that he would return in an hour. The guards rushed into the room and asked if the Viscount was all right. The protagonist flew to a safe distance and looked at the receding castle. The captain of the guards was surprised. What was a wyvern doing here? The Viscount began to beat the captain of the guards, calling him useless. All they know how to do is collect their pay. Roxlin asked where the guards were when he was attacked. The Viscount ordered the scroll to be burned, the taught prisoners to be dressed in military uniforms, and weapons to be issued to them. The Viscount said he wanted to see Blizzard's face when he realized that he had destroyed his own people with his own hands. Roxlin declared that he must be held accountable. How dare he start a war? The Knights of Tot must be notified of this extraordinary event. Roxlin said that from that moment on, he was declaring war on Carolyn. The Viscount added that whoever distinguished themselves the most would receive a generous reward. The knights were inspired. Behind the Viscount stood a knight who had heard Roxlin's words. In his hand, he held a crystal for communicating with Blizzard. The Baron, riding a wyvern, said he had heard everything. Soldiers stood on the fortress wall, ready to repel the attack. Below the walls, a crowd had also gathered. The prisoners were armed and puzzled by what was happening. Roxlin waited for Blizzard to give the order to destroy his people. Then he would know despair. Baron Blizzard, at the head of his army, prepared to storm the city of Tot. The prisoners looked up and were surprised to see huge birds approaching them. Roxlin was surprised. What kind of attack was this? A squadron of wyverns was approaching the city. Huge stones began to fall from above, which the attackers carried with them. The mage among the prisoners activated the defenses so that the inhabitants of the city of Carolyn would not be harmed. Jerome told the Blizzard Knights that the soldiers in the fortress were residents of Carolyn. They needed to be evacuated to a safe place. Max and his squad quickly penetrated the destroyed wall. The squad commander said that now they would show Tot's army the full power of Carolyn. Roxlin was furious. How did Blizzard know that there were prisoners behind the fortress gates? When did Carolyn become so powerful? Carolyn's knights flew toward their opponents on ice wyverns, striking terror into the hearts of their enemies. The enemies looked at the protagonist. They couldn't understand how he could be here. Was he alone? The order was given to attack the Baron all at once. Baron Blizzard, using his unique abilities, attacked the knights with ice blocks and dealt with them. The knights were terrified. Roxlin demanded that they fight immediately. Viscount Roxlin sent a man to Duke Icarus with a request for reinforcements. They had to hold out until they arrived, and victory would be assured. The guards turned and began to flee. They said that the Viscount could stay here and die. Roxlin ordered them to return, but no one listened. The Viscount saw a huge wyvern in front of him. Baron Blizzard told Lilith not to eat garbage, or she would get indigestion. The Viscount was surprised to see his rival, Baron Blizzard, standing before him. The Viscount knelt down and admitted that he was wrong and accepted defeat. Roxlin stated that he could not disobey Duke Icarus's orders and asked for mercy. The squad commander told the Baron that they had captured a soldier who was heading for the Duke of Icarus's domain. Blizzard noted that it must have been difficult for the Viscount to lie, knowing that he himself did not believe it. The protagonist said that Roxlin would pay with his life for daring to oppress his people. The Baron struck the Viscount with a devastating blow, which was blocked. Blizzard looked at Jerome and wondered what he was doing. The mage was the one who blocked the blow. Jerome used his unique abilities to prevent Viscount Roxlin from being harmed. Jerome said that no matter how terrible a crime an aristocrat had committed, the right to decide whether he was worthy of life or not belonged exclusively to the king. If the Baron dealt with the Viscount, their situation would become extremely difficult. Roxlin acknowledged that the Count was correct. Could Baron Blizzard really be so ignorant? Roxlin turned around and thought, finally he has arrived. Knight Volmer approached the rivals. Roxlin laughed. Did the Baron really think he had sent a messenger only to Duke Icarus? A territorial war must be reported to His Majesty and conducted under the supervision of a representative of the royal family. Roxlin said that Blizzard had not reported to the royal court, so he had sent Volmer there. The Baron wanted to achieve the enemy's surrender before the king found out about everything. Roxlin added that his plans would collapse because of his arrogance. Jerome thought that couldn't be true. There should have been soldiers on the road to the capital. How did Volmer manage to get past them? Blizzard said that now Volmer could reveal his true colors. Jerome and Roxlin were extremely surprised. Volmer took off his mask, and everyone saw that it was Miller. Roxlin did not understand how this could have happened. Since when? Miller told Milord that he had carried out his orders. Blizzard noted that there was one clause in the Code of Laws on territorial wars. It allows for an attack without prior notice on anyone who has violated royal law. Roxlin sold the inhabitants of Carolyn into slavery. In the Kingdom of Drake, the slave trade is prohibited. Roxlin was disheartened. He had gone to great lengths to get this position. If he now lost both Tot's lands and his title, Duke Icarus would destroy him. The Viscount was frightened, turned around and started to run away, shouting that he did not want to die. The Baron used his unique abilities, and the Viscount's feet froze to the ground. The Baron approached the Viscount, swung his fist, and told him to shut up. Roxlin was punched in the jaw and fell to the ground. Baron Blizzard declared that Carolyn had won the war. Things went smoothly from there. Roxlin, having lost everything he had, was expelled from his estates. A few days later, he disappeared without a trace. It was annexed to Carolyn. Blizzard entrusted Jerome with the administration of the new administrative district. However, Jerome refused, saying that he already had enough work. Otherwise, he was ready to go on strike. The Baron asked his assistant who should be appointed to the post in that case. Count Jerome smiled and said he had the perfect candidate. On Jerome's advice, Roxlin's former vassal, Volmer, was appointed head of Todd. Baron Blizzard could not fully trust him, so he assigned 2 knights to report to him every day. The birthday of King Tomaloff III arrived. The guards at the gate also wanted to have fun at the celebration, but they remained at their posts, hoping for an extra reward. One of the guards was surprised. Where did this shadow come from? The knights looked up and saw a wyvern above them. The guards shouted that monsters were invading the city, that it was necessary to sound the alarm and mobilize everyone. Baron Blizzard descended from the wyvern and told the guards not to rush. He announced that he was Lord Carolyn. The guards were surprised. Could this be the same magical swordsman who saved His Majesty? The Baron said that he had come to visit His Majesty. There were many guests in the palace. The young people were waiting for the celebration to begin. A servant announced that Baron Blizzard had arrived. The ladies present noted that he was an incredible man. They said that he had saved His Majesty and could even use fifth circle magic. Schiller McMahon told the Baron that she was glad to see him again. The princess asked how the Baron was doing. Blizzard replied that everything was fine. After that, there was a pause. Schiller was surprised. Shouldn't the Baron ask how she was doing in return? The Baron offered the girl a glass of champagne. Blizzard said that his assistant had told him that at parties, girls always go first. The servant announced the arrival of Her Highness Princess Daphrin of the Kingdom of Hazen. Count Anos also arrived. The Baron thought that Princess Daphrin's beauty had not changed. Those present noted that the couple suited each other well. Blizzard thought that Enos was the one mentioned in Edmund's letter, the great master of the sword. Schiller asked if they knew each other. For some reason, our hero felt that Enos was not of this world. Blizzard replied to the princess that he did not know this man. Schiller asked the Baron, was the woman he was with last time not here? Blizzard asked, was the princess curious about that girl? Blizzard said that we should wait a little, as she always makes a dramatic entrance. A servant announced the arrival of His Majesty King Tomaloff III. The king entered, accompanied by the princesses. Schiller thought, could that woman be the princess of the Kingdom of Drake? The girl asked the Baron, is this the dramatic entrance he was talking about? Esild saw the Baron waving at her. However, the Baron was not alone. Esild was indignant. Why was this woman here? She had heard that the first princess, Gaia, was supposed to arrive. Those present began to congratulate His Majesty on his 50th birthday. The king thanked everyone and expressed his gratitude for their coming to celebrate his birthday. Tomalova III expressed his hope that everyone present would have a wonderful time. The princess said she was very excited. What gifts would her father receive this year? A gift from Duke Icarus to His Majesty was announced. The Duke stood with a box in his hands. Inside the box was a ring with a precious stone. Icarus said that this ring would protect His Majesty from now on. It could neutralize all offensive magic below the 9th circle. Schiller noted that this artifact was imbued with magic. The king put the ring on his finger. There is no magic higher than the 9th circle, so this is a priceless relic. His Majesty thanked the Duke for such a rare gift. Icarus once again congratulated the king on his birthday. Those present noted that Duke Icarus had brought something truly incredible. Is there a gift that could surpass this? No gift could outshine Duke Icarus's gift. The servant announced the last gift. It was a gift from Baron Blizzard. The Baron knelt and inquired whether His Majesty had eaten well. The king said he was glad to see Baron Blizzard in good health. Blizzard opened the box and said it was a gift prepared especially for this occasion. It was the skin of an ice ogre that he had personally hunted. The king asked if the Baron was referring to the ferocious ogres from the northern lands. The Baron confirmed this. Blizzard said he asked the king to accept his sincerity. The king thanked him and said he would make winter clothes for the cold season from this skin. Duke Icarus thought it was very poor to bring something like this as a gift. Only a person of low birth would do such a thing. Blizzard said that one skin seemed insufficient, so he would present another gift. The king and princesses eagerly awaited to see what the gift would be. His Majesty looked into the box and saw some strange objects. What could they be? Baron Blizzard said they were monster eggs. Everyone present was extremely surprised, and many were outraged. Duke Icarus shouted that this was extremely disrespectful to the king. It was an attack on the royal family. The Duke ordered the guards to remove this man immediately. His Majesty raised his voice to stop the guards. The king inquired about Baron Blizzard's intentions. The Baron replied that they were the eggs of an ice wyvern. Since ancient times, people had tried to breed and tame them, but due to their ferocious nature and the difficulty of obtaining their eggs, it was considered virtually impossible. If ordinary wyverns could be tamed, it would already be a tremendous strength. Baron Blizzard said that taming ice wyverns would greatly increase the military power of the Kingdom of Drake. The king thanked the Baron for the gift. However, he understood that finding eggs was not as easy as raising animals from them. The Baron agreed that raising ice wyvern hatchlings was no easy task. The Baron called Lilith, and everyone present gasped in surprise. A huge and terrifying shadow appeared outside the window. It was a wyvern. Blizzard said that he had tamed this wyvern when it was still a baby, and that he would teach the royal trainer how to raise it. The Baron explained that if the cub remembered the king's face, it would recognize him as its parent and follow him. Blizzard added that 2 of these eggs were intended for the beautiful princesses. The ice wyverns would become formidable guardians of the royal family. The king was touched, for the Baron had taken care not only of him, but also of his daughters. Blizzard proved to be a truly thoughtful man. The king said that now the Kingdom of Drake was only a step away from becoming as powerful as the Empire of Zeba. It was the best gift he had ever received. The princess remembered that a few days ago, the Baron had asked her to wait. Now she understood what that meant. Duke Icarus did not understand how Blizzard had managed to obtain these eggs. The Duke said he had something extremely important to report. 2 days ago, Baron Blizzard sent armed forces to the Viscount of Roxland's domain. The king was surprised. Why would Karelin attack Tot? The Duke explained that Baron Blizzard had started a territorial war. However, a war started without a report was punishable. The Duke added that a harsh punishment was required for the insolent man who had arbitrarily started the war. His Majesty thought, if this is true, the situation will become much more complicated. Princess Esseld was upset. What should be done? This could ruin public opinion of Baron Blizzard. Duke Icarus thought that Baron Blizzard could be dismissed. Blizzard asked the king if slave trading was legal in the Kingdom of Drake. The sovereign replied that this activity was prohibited. Blizzard took out a scroll and said that he had a document confirming that Roxland was involved in the slave trade. Everyone present was shocked by this news. Blizzard reported that Roxland had been capturing his people and selling them into slavery. His people were being traded. Baron Blizzard asked how the Lord was not angry. Duke Icarus thought that the scoundrel Roxland had set him up by secretly engaging in the slave trade. The princess declared that war could be declared without report on anyone who violated the laws of the kingdom. His Majesty said that this was indeed a compelling reason, so he would make an exception and not impose punishment. The king added that he ordered the lands of Tot to be annexed to the lands of Karelon. Count Slave asked the king if, since the Baron's territory had increased, he should be granted a new title. His Majesty agreed with the count. He summoned Baron Blizzard to him. The king announced that from that moment on, he would refer to Baron Blizzard as Viscount. His Majesty offered his congratulations. Viscount Blizzard thanked the king. Duke Icarus thought he would do everything possible to destroy Blizzard. The protagonist went out onto the veranda to be alone and calm down. Blizzard thought that because of the crowd of aristocrats, he couldn't even talk to Esseld. However, our hero finally found himself here. Blizzard looked back and saw a young man behind him. The Viscount asked who he was. Standing before the hero was Count Inos from the Kingdom of Hyson. Inos announced that he had finally found Sol Mudok. The protagonist heard the language of the Central Plains. Inos closed the door behind him and said that he had been searching for his teacher's enemy for a long time. Inos grabbed his sword and drew it from its sheath. Blizzard smelled a distinct aroma. It was the scent of blossoming plum trees. Our hero remembered the enemy's words. If his student had been here, everything would have turned out differently. So this was the very student that John Pungjin had spoken of before his death. This man was known as the best young talent in the Central Plains. Standing before our hero was Li Chin-chong, nicknamed True Purity. The rivals crossed swords, their eyes full of determination and confidence. After a short but fierce battle, neither side emerged victorious. Sol Mudok realized that the rumor that he was facing the best young talent in the Central Plains was true. Li Chin-chong warned Sol Mudok not to be arrogant. Li Chin-chong said he had been looking for this man for 3 years. In the end, the rumors led him to the ship. Hiding there, he waited for the right moment to deal with Sol Mudok. But suddenly a strong storm hit. The lights went out, and he came to his senses here. Li Chin-chong said that he had not forgotten about revenge for a single day. The best young talent of the Central Plains declared that he would finally behead his enemy. Now he could unleash all the fury of a volcano. Sol Mudok thought that this young man's technique was unlike anything else. Perhaps even he would find it difficult to counter. The door to the veranda opened, and Schiller appeared on the threshold. She said she was looking for Mr. Blizzard. The girl asked what the young people were doing here alone. Blizzard replied that he had met a fellow countryman for the first time in a long time, and they had talked a little. Li Chinchong looked closely at Schiller. He thought that she was the second princess of the kingdom of Gaia, Schiller McMahon. Could she be close to Sol Mudok? Chinchong thought if he dealt with Sol Mudok in front of the princess, there could be problems. It was unfortunate, but this time it was better to back off. Li Chinchong apologized and said he would leave first so that the young people could talk in peace. Schiller replied that it had been a pleasure to meet him. Li Chinchong left the veranda, leaving our hero alone with the princess. Translating his thoughts, Chinchong reflected that Sol Mudok had deprived him of everything that was dear to him, and therefore he would destroy everything that Sol Mudok cherished. He would destroy property, loved ones, everything indiscriminately. First, he would destroy the one he looked at with love in his eyes, the princess of the kingdom of Drake. Sol Mudok responded to his opponent by broadcasting his thoughts. Chinchong would not dare touch Isolde. She had nothing to do with their conflict. Li Chinchong said that everything would depend on Sol Mudok's behavior. Schiller suggested that a serious conversation had taken place between the young people. She asked what exactly had happened between them. Viscount Blizzard said he had to leave because he had urgent business to attend to. Schiller grabbed the young man by the hem of his clothes, trying to hold him back. Blizzard asked if the girl had anything else to say to him. Schiller replied that it wasn't that important, but that it was rude of him to leave when she had found him herself. The girl added that the Viscount should learn some manners. Blizzard asked if the princess really had nothing better to do. Honored guests had arrived from every country to celebrate His Majesty's birthday. Didn't the representative of Gaia need to socialize with them? The Viscount asked why Schiller was always following him around. The girl was confused. Could she really be annoying? Schiller thought that other men were trying to get her to say at least one word to them. Why was this man completely different? The girl said that Blizzard was mistaken. She just wanted to congratulate him on receiving the title of Viscount. Schiller added that that was all. The young man said that his words were unnecessary and apologized. He added that he really needed to leave on urgent business and thanked the princess for her congratulations. Princess Schiller watched the Viscount walk away. She saw him approach Princess Isolde and take her by the shoulders. Schiller wondered, if he had met her first, would he have liked her? The princess pulled herself together and decided that now was not the time to think about that. The girl decided that she needed to take care of her own life first. The main thing now was to escape from her sister, who was going to deal with her. She had to return to the kingdom and do everything in her power. Schiller saw Princess Daphne talking to a young man. Who was this man next to her? The girl felt like she had seen that face somewhere before. Schiller remembered. It was Mr. Blizzard's assistant, Jerome. What were they doing here together? The assistant reported to his master that they had searched the entire palace but had not found the princess. She said she was going out for some fresh air. Count Inos thought that she was constantly making him worry. The Count ordered the search to continue and to report to him immediately when Daphne was found. Daphne recalled the events that had taken place before that evening. The young man informed the princess that she would be traveling to the kingdom of Drake as an ambassador with Count Inos. Daphne thought that if it weren't for her brother's order, she wouldn't be here now. The thought occurred to her that it would be nice to run away. Jerome thought the same. The princess looked back and noticed a young man nearby. She was frightened and asked who he was. Jerome apologized. He said he didn't expect anyone to be here at this hour. Daphne replied that the young man didn't need to apologize. She was just a little scared. The girl noted to herself that this guy was cute. The young man introduced himself as Jerome, the Viscount's assistant. Daphne said she was pleased to meet him and gave her name. Daphne Laird. The young man said it was a beautiful name and smiled. He remembered that Daphne Laird was known throughout the continent for her irresistible beauty. She was Princess Hyson. Jerome knelt down and apologized for not recognizing Her Highness. He asked for forgiveness for his ignorance. Daphne said it was all right and that she didn't mind such things. Jerome thought there was something sad in the princess's expression. The young man asked permission to sit next to her for a while. He explained that he was waiting for Lord Blizzard to return from the celebration, unless, of course, his presence would cause the princess any inconvenience. The princess blushed shyly and said that Jerome could do whatever he wanted. The young people began to talk. Jerome told her that he usually cleans up the messes that Lord Blizzard gets himself into. The princess suggested that Jerome had a lot of unspoken feelings toward the Lord. The young man remarked that he was the only one talking at the moment. Daphne replied that she was interested in listening to him. Jerome asked why the princess said she wanted to run away. Daphne explained that her brother was forcing her into a marriage of convenience. She did not want to devote her entire life exclusively to the development of the country. The girl noted that the conversation had turned out to be too heavy, but they were talking so casually that she did not even notice how the topic had changed. Jerome asked if he, a simple servant, could help the princess in any way. If he could do anything, then he was ready to use his mana. Daphne was surprised. Why was her heart beating so fast? The princess turned away in embarrassment. She couldn't look the young man straight in the eye. Daphne thanked Sir Jerome for his words. Suddenly, Anos appeared and called out to the princess. He said he had finally found Daphne. Anos asked the girl who the man was. Jerome replied that he was just a passing magician. The young man realized that he was standing before the great master swordsman, Anos. Jerome told the princess that if her guards had arrived, he would take his leave. Daphne called out to him as he was about to leave. The young people said goodbye for a while longer. Anos took the princess away, reminding her that His Majesty had promised to hold a grand ceremony after the holiday was over. Anos said that Princess Daphne should open her heart to him. Daphne replied that she would go first. Jerome realized that this girl had a political marriage with Anos. As they parted, Daphne told Jerome that they would meet again in 3 days at the same time. Jerome was left alone, and the princess returned to the palace. Anos followed her. Isilde thought that small talk was very tiring. Viscount Blizzard held out his hand and asked the princess to grant him a dance. The girl agreed, and the young people whirled around in a whirlwind of dance. The king, watching the princess, asked Count Cotton, "Are these two quite close, or does it just seem that way to him?" Cotton replied that he thought so too. His Majesty said that he had not seen the princess smile so broadly in a long time. The king asked Count Cotton if he thought Isilde was fond of Blizzard. Cotton replied that Viscount Blizzard was said to be doing quite well. Did His Majesty really think that was possible? Until recently, this man was a commoner. Even for a Viscount, it was unthinkable to consider a relationship with the princess. No matter how outstanding his combat skills are, there is a limit to everything. It is difficult to understand the complicated relationships and interests of the aristocracy. Count Cotton added that the Viscount should not cherish feudal hopes. The wyvern reappeared over the city. Blizzard asked Edmund how things were going. Edmund Roll was happy to see the magical swordsman again. The protagonist asked if the guild leader now had enough to live on. Edmund replied that he had no reason to complain. He had become the best merchant in the kingdom and felt a surge of strength every day. Edmund said that the magical swordsman had become a viscount after winning a territorial war. So much had happened in such a short time. Blizzard said he had come here with one request. The protagonist said that he needed to find a mansion that would surpass even Icarus' mansion in luxury and splendor. Edmund replied that he understood and would prepare everything as soon as possible. Edmund Roll thought that the magical swordsman had finally begun to act. Now they would be able to respond to the Akasa trading house and Duke Icarus, who had destroyed his royal trading house. Edmund reasoned that this man would surely be able to defeat Icarus and rise even higher. He needed to be provided with the means to avoid financial difficulties. The guild leader asked why Sir Swordsman was alone and where his servant was. Blizzard replied that Jerome was on a special assignment. At that moment, Jerome was indeed on an important mission. He was in a cafe. Jerome was asked to find out who was behind the destruction of the Miller family. Jerome was surprised why he was being entrusted with everything. He wondered if Princess Daphne was all right and why she wanted to meet in 3 days. A young man approached Jerome and expressed surprise. They said he had gone missing, but it turned out he was still alive. Jerome looked back and saw Leon standing nearby. They really hadn't seen each other in a long time. Jerome was delighted and said that he had too handsome a face to die. Leon noticed that Prince Jerome's complex had not gone away. Leon asked what information Jerome had come here for. Jerome placed a bag of money and jewels on the table. Leon said that there would be a lot of surveillance. Was this an important person? Jerome replied that he was fulfilling a request, so he didn't know all the details himself. Leon asked what the target's name was. Jerome replied, Miller Kramer. Leon said that now he understood why the sum was so large. He added that everyone who had investigated the death of the Kramer family was already dead. Jerome said he hadn't heard anything about that. Leon suggested pretending that their conversation had never taken place. Jerome said that if Leon obtained the information, he would receive double the amount. Leon noted that more than 10 years had passed, so perhaps everything was fine now. He would see what he could do. Jerome wondered what had happened to the Krimers if even Leon, the head of the Information Guild, was afraid to take on the case. That meant someone really dangerous was involved. Jerome shared the information he had obtained. He said that the Kramers had an earldom. Miller was the second son. Their family was well known in the kingdom and influential. 10 years ago, the entire family was poisoned. Only Miller managed to survive. Blizzard asked if they had found the killer. Jerome replied that it was a certain Baron Gideon. Edmund suggested that Baron Gideon was not the main culprit. He was just a puppet in someone else's hands. Edmund added that there was a real culprit who ordered the poisoning of the family. Miller said that today he would deal with Baron Gideon and complete his revenge. Miller was surprised. Why had my lord come to him at such a time? Edmund said that he remembered Miller when he was a little boy. The young gentleman had grown up a lot. The guildmaster introduced himself and noted that Count Krimmer had once supported them. Edmund said he wanted to tell him what had really happened that day. It was true that Baron Gideon had poisoned them. However, he was acting on the orders of Duke Icarus. Miller couldn't believe what he was hearing. How did Icarus benefit from the disappearance of his family? Edmund explained that the largest trading association in the kingdom was a casa. Its actual owner was Duke Icarus. Edmund added that in order to grow a casa, Icarus needed to eliminate the most successful associations of the time, Roll and Krimmer. Miller was horrified. So he had been working for the man who destroyed his family? Blizzard asked Miller where he was going. Miller said he intended to destroy Icarus. Blizzard said that Miller, with his skills, would not be able to defeat Icarus, who was a master swordsman. Miller replied that he didn't care. Was the Viscount really going to stop him? Blizzard said that if Miller wants to leave, he must first defeat him. The assassin said that if necessary, he was prepared to do so. Miller attacked, but Blizzard effectively dodged the attack. The protagonist noted that it was aimed at vital points and demonstrated economical movements. It was clear that Miller had been training diligently all this time. The protagonist touched his opponent's vital point and said that now he would not be able to move for half a day. Miller was deactivated and fell to the floor. The assassin sat on the floor trying to stabilize his breathing. Miller worked on his own pressure points to recover. Blizzard was surprised. Blizzard said he hadn't shown Miller where those points were. How did he do it? Miller asked, hadn't the magical swordsman shown them to him himself? Blizzard was surprised. Had this guy copied what he had seen in just a moment? Miller said he wasn't done yet. However, after saying this, he immediately lost consciousness and fell to the floor. Blizzard told Edmund to take the guy to his room. When Miller regained consciousness, he was to find him. Starting tomorrow, Blizzard would personally train this guy to hit vital points. The protagonist thought that his eyes had not deceived him. Miller was an uncut diamond with outstanding talent. If trained well, he could become a first-class killer. The Viscount said that the road would be long. Suddenly, a call came in on the communication stone. It was Escald. The girl asked for help and said she was in a very cold place. The Viscount was alarmed and asked where Escald was. The connection was lost and Blizzard immediately rushed to find the princess. To save time, he even jumped out of the window. In his mind, he asked the princess to wait for him. Isilde was freezing and losing consciousness. Viscount Blizzard thought he needed to find the coldest place nearby. Most likely, the princess was there. Scanning the space with his inner vision, our hero realized where Escald might be. Blizzard burst into the room where the wyvern eggs were kept. The princess was indeed there, shivering from the cold. The Viscount carried the girl out of the building in his arms and asked what had happened. Why had the princess been locked up? Isilde said she had gone in to check that everything was all right with the ice wyvern eggs she had been given, but had been unable to get back out. The Viscount reminded her that he had warned her. The barn where the eggs were stored was protected by a spell that lowered the temperature. Why had the princess acted so recklessly? Isilde apologized to the Viscount because he had come thanks to the connection stone. Blizzard hugged the girl and said he never wanted to lose her again. The young people looked at the wyvern eggs. The eggs trembled and began to glow. One of the eggs cracked and a wyvern cub appeared. The Viscount asked the princess to remove the slime from the ice wyvern's body. That way, the baby would consider her its mother. The princess wiped the baby and said it was soft and fluffy. Isilde asked if it remembered her now. Blizzard asked the girl to introduce herself. Isilde greeted him and said she was pleased to meet him. The cub purred and even smiled. Isilde hugged the little wyvern and said he was very cute. Blizzard suggested that the cub was female. The princess was surprised. Could the Viscount really tell by its appearance? The Viscount said that the sex of ice wyverns, like chickens, is determined by their cloaca. The beast was born healthy, so the princess should take good care of it. Isilde smiled and thanked the Viscount. She promised to raise the wyvern to be beautiful and healthy. The princess asked what to name the baby. The Viscount suggested that the girl choose the name herself. The maid watched the movement near the ice barn from the window. After the king's birthday, a solemn ceremony was held to award the title. The king summoned Blizzard to him. His Majesty named the young man Viscount of the Kingdom of Drake. Thus, Sol Mudok officially received the title of Viscount. A Grand Council of State was immediately announced. A Grand Council is a meeting that all the aristocrats of the kingdom can attend. Usually, they pick the members of the small council and talk about stuff that's important to the aristocrats. The king said that the first item on the agenda of the current Grand Council was the election of members of the small council. If those present had a candidate in mind, they could raise their hand and call out their name. One of those present recommended Duke Icarus. Another recommendation was also made, Count Slave. The Viscount thought that even an outsider would understand the balance of power here. It was immediately clear who was in Icarus's entourage and who was loyal to the king. Now that our hero had become a Viscount, there was no one who could recommend him. However, Duke Icarus spoke up. He said he would like to recommend Viscount Blizzard. The Viscount had demonstrated his abilities well. He was qualified enough to become a member of the small state council. There were no objections and the proposal was supported. Princess Isolde thought that the Duke had first sent the Viscount to the northern lands and now recommended him as a member of the council. He was definitely up to something. By unanimous decision, Viscount Blizzard was elected to the small council. The Duke congratulated the Viscount on joining the royal circle. The small state council meets every week, so becoming a member means he won't be able to travel far abroad. The Duke thought that he had many people here who served as his eyes and ears. Now there was no need to expand his sphere of influence. Blizzard could try his best while the web tightened around his neck. After the meeting, the princess signaled the Viscount to come to her room. Blizzard, as always, appeared unexpectedly through the window. The Viscount asked what the princess wanted to talk to him about. Isolde asked why Duke Icarus had recommended him to the council. Blizzard replied that he did not know. Perhaps the princess had a theory about it? The princess replied that she didn't know either, but found it hard to believe that the Duke would do so without a good reason. Isolde said that this man was the one who had openly sent assassins after her father and sent Blizzard far north. She added that this man was definitely plotting something behind their backs. He was someone who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. They needed to be careful. The princess added that now the Viscount had become a member of the council, so they would be able to see each other more often. Blizzard replied that he would deal with the Duke, as always. There was no need to worry too much. There was a knock at the door. The maid asked permission to enter. The princess said that the Viscount had hidden and left the room through the window. 10 days earlier, during another meeting, Princess Daphne told Jerome about her escape. The young man was surprised. Where did the princess want to run away to? Daphne asked if Jerome could take her somewhere where she would not be recognized. Jerome said that he was Lord Corellin's servant. If it became known that he had helped her escape, war could break out between the countries. Daphne asked if the Count's promise was a lie. The young man was surprised. Daphne reminded him that Jerome had promised to use his mana to help her. Had he forgotten? Daphne said that this was the first time in her life that she had left the kingdom of Hazel and spoken to foreigners. The princess said that after her father's death, her brother locked her in her room and only allowed her to go out for ceremonial events. No matter how beautiful her clothes were or how delicious the food was, she did not know the meaning of the word freedom. Then a political engagement was arranged with Count Inos. She tried to love him, but he was just her brother's loyal dog, a man who didn't care about her feelings or thoughts. The only person who looked at her differently was Sir Jerome. Only he could understand her. Daphne apologized if she had caused any inconvenience. It was naive of her to take this promise to heart. The girl said goodbye to Jerome. Tears welled up in her eyes. Jerome was indecisive. He did not know what to do. The young man told the princess that it would not work out after all. Seeing that Jerome was hesitating, the princess rushed to him and asked if he would do it or not. He just had to say yes. Jerome saw how the princess had suddenly changed and said he would do everything. Daphne thanked the young man. Jerome said he would let her know the meeting place. 10 days passed. The young man said he would wait until sunset on the 3rd floor of the Blue Cat Tavern east of the castle. No one could find out about this. They did not see or speak to each other today. Daphne said she understood everything and promised to be there on time. Jerome went into the Viscount's room. Blizzard asked what had happened. Jerome said he was going to Tot for an inspection. The Viscount was surprised. Alone? The assistant said he needed to check how Volmer was doing with the management. The Viscount agreed that it was important and added that Jerome should go first. Blizzard promised to come there after the next meeting. Jerome said it wasn't worth doing. Even on horseback, it would take at least 5 days, which would prevent the Viscount from attending the small council. Jerome promised to write a report after the trip. The Viscount said that it would take only 1 day to get there on a wyvern. Jerome remembered. Indeed, there were wyverns. He had somehow forgotten about that. Blizzard asked what had happened to Jerome. He hadn't been himself all week. The young man replied that he was fine. In that case, the Viscount instructed his assistant to deal with Tot. Jerome left the Viscount's office and thought that tomorrow everything should work out. Before he would have refused, but now it was madness. The young man believed that he had to stop immediately. However, Jerome remembered the princess's tearful face again. Princess Isolde was still lost in thought. What was Duke Icarus thinking? There was no reason to recommend the Viscount to the small state council. But if Viscount Blizzard said he would take care of it, then everything must be fine. The doors opened, and His Majesty Tomalov III and Princess Isolde were announced. The princess smiled when she caught the Viscount's gaze. The start of the small council meeting was announced. The first item on the agenda was the case of Duke Icarus. Icarus addressed everyone present. The Duke said that what he wanted to discuss today was related to Her Highness's marriage. The princess did not expect this and even jumped up from her seat. What did her marriage have to do with it? What could Duke Icarus be talking about? The Duke apologized if it was too unexpected for the princess, but she had already turned 20 this year. Icarus added that the situation was such that there had not even been a single proposal yet. This had never happened in any royal family. Icarus said he was concerned that the royal lineage might be interrupted. Therefore, he officially insisted on speeding up Her Highness's marriage. One of the members of the small council present was outraged by Duke Icarus' words. How dare he say such things under the pretext of concern? His face says it all. A supporter of Icarus said that he should watch his words. The Duke said this openly because he is concerned about the future of the kingdom. The presiding count slave called for silence. The princess snatched a wooden hammer from Slave's hands and smashed it on the table. Eskel shouted for everyone to be quiet. The girl apologized and suggested continuing the meeting. The princess was surprised. Why wasn't her father saying anything? The king told his daughter to sit down in her seat. The princess was surprised. Did His Majesty really agree with this? Hadn't the king promised that she could choose her own husband? Tomalov III said that this was the fate of all royal children. His daughter must stop this childish behavior. The princess headed for the exit. Count Slave said that the meeting was not over yet. The upset princess asked her maid what she should do now. Isolde said that the only one she liked was Viscount Blizzard. The maid said that nothing had been decided yet. She shouldn't be so categorical and give up. The princess said that they clearly wanted to marry her off to Justin so that he could inherit the throne. There were 3 princesses in the Tomalov family, and they had no right to inherit the crown. Isolde added that Duke Icarus would do whatever it takes to achieve his goal. The girl thought that if that was the case, she could just tell everyone that no one but Viscount Blizzard would be her husband. The maid told the princess not to rush and to maintain her dignity. Isolde was indignant. How long should she maintain this dignity? She could not bear it any longer. The maid said that the princess should not do that. She understood her feelings, but if the princess did that, the kingdom would be turned upside down. Isolde told Lenshia to let her go. Everything inside her was already upside down. What difference did it make now? The door to the room opened. The maid was standing on the other side of the threshold. Viscount Blizzard was standing nearby. The young man asked if she was eavesdropping under the doors of Her Highness's chambers. Whose spy was she? The maid said that wasn't the case, she was just cleaning near the door. Isolde asked the Viscount what was going on. Blizzard said he had come here because he was worried about the princess. However, the girl had been eavesdropping from outside the room. Isolde asked the maid, "Is the Viscount telling the truth?" The maid said again that she was just cleaning up here. The princess said she had never seen this maid here before. Did she come here knowing that the princess's chambers were here? The maid said she was very sorry. Today was her first time in this part of the palace. She was still unfamiliar with the layout and seemed to have gotten lost. The princess said she didn't want to see the maid again. Next time, she wouldn't let it slide. The maid thanked the princess for her understanding. She would not come near this place again. Isolde told Lenshia to keep an eye on the maid. Blizzard asked if the princess would really let her go so easily. The girl replied that there was no good reason to punish her. Until she found out who was behind it all, it would happen again. Blizzard asked if the princess had any ideas. Isolde replied that there was only one person, Duke Icarus. Most of the nobility and servants in this palace had been bribed by Icarus. Therefore, no matter what he did, no one could oppose him. The Viscount knew that the royal family's power was weak, but he did not expect this. The princess asked the Viscount what she should do. If things continued like this, she would have to marry Justin, as Duke Icarus wanted. Blizzard told the princess not to worry. He would talk to His Majesty himself. The Viscount added that he had an idea and would try to change the king's mind. The squad of knights told their subordinates that the princess couldn't have gone far. They needed to search the entire area. The girl was hiding around the corner. Princess Daphne remained unnoticed. Jerome waited for the fugitive at the appointed place and time. The young man remembered the image of the princess with tears in his eyes. He was already beginning to think that the princess would not come. However, the door swung open and Daphne appeared on the threshold. She asked how long Jerome had been waiting for her. Jerome had been waiting, but he was still surprised when he saw Princess Daphne. The young man looked out the window and saw the knights who were still searching for the princess. They decided to search the entire building because they couldn't let her get away. Daphne asked anxiously what they should do. They would surely catch her. The young man blocked the door to the room, but the princess said that this would not stop the soldiers. Jerome said that he had expected something like this, so he had brought something with him. They began knocking on the door and demanding that it be opened. The knights assumed that the princess was inside. Jerome told the princess to hold on tight to him. The young man unrolled the scroll and read the spell. The magical transformations began. They set off for Thoth, disappearing from the room. Icarus said he was concerned that the royal lineage might be interrupted. Therefore, he officially insisted on hastening Her Highness's marriage. One of the members of the small council present was outraged by Duke Icarus's words. How dare he say such things under the pretext of concern? His face says it all. A supporter of Icarus said that he should watch his words. The Duke said this openly because he is concerned about the future of the kingdom. The presiding count slave called for silence. The princess snatched a wooden hammer from Slave's hands and smashed it on the table. Eskild shouted for everyone to be quiet. The girl apologized and suggested continuing the meeting. The princess was surprised. Why wasn't her father saying anything? The king told his daughter to sit down in her seat. The princess was surprised. Did His Majesty really agree with this? Hadn't the king promised that she could choose her own husband? Tomalov III said that this was the fate of all royal children. His daughter must stop this childish behavior. The princess headed for the exit. Count Slave said that the meeting was not over yet. The upset princess asked her maid what she should do now. Isil said that the only one she liked was Viscount Blizzard. The maid said that nothing had been decided yet. She shouldn't be so categorical and give up. The princess said that they clearly wanted to marry her off to Justin so that he could inherit the throne. There were 3 princesses in the Tomalov family, and they had no right to inherit the crown. Isilde added that Duke Icarus would do whatever it takes to achieve his goal. The girl thought that if that was the case, she could just tell everyone that no one but Viscount Blizzard would be her husband. The maid told the princess not to rush and to maintain her dignity. Essel was indignant. How long should she maintain this dignity? She could not bear it any longer. The maid said that the princess should not do that. She understood her feelings, but if the princess did that, the kingdom would be turned upside down. Isilde told Lenshia to let her go. Everything inside her was already upside down. What difference did it make now? The door to the room opened. The maid was standing on the other side of the threshold. Viscount Blizzard was standing nearby. The young man asked if she was eavesdropping under the doors of Her Highness's chambers. Whose spy was she? The maid said that wasn't the case. She was just cleaning near the door. Isilde asked the Viscount what was going on. Blizzard said he had come here because he was worried about the princess. However, the girl had been eavesdropping near the room. Isilde asked the maid, "Is the Viscount telling the truth?" The maid said again that she was just cleaning up here. The princess said she had not seen this maid here before. Did she come here knowing that the princess's chambers were here? The maid said she was very sorry. Today was her first time in this part of the palace. She was still unfamiliar with the layout and seemed to have gotten lost. The princess said she didn't want to see the maid again. Next time, she wouldn't let it slide. The maid thanked the princess for her understanding. She would not come near this place again. Isilde told Lenshia to keep an eye on the maid. Blizzard asked if the princess would really let her go so easily. The girl replied that there was no good reason to punish her. Until she found out who was behind all this, it would happen again. Blizzard asked if the princess had any ideas. Isilde replied that there was only one person, Duke Icarus. Most of the nobles and servants in this palace had been bribed by Icarus. Therefore, no matter what he did, no one could oppose him. The Viscount knew that the royal family's power was weak, but he did not expect this. The princess asked the Viscount what she should do. If things continued like this, she would have to marry Justin, as Duke Icarus wanted. Blizzard told the princess not to worry. He would speak to His Majesty himself. The Viscount added that he had an idea and would try to change the king's mind. The squad of knights told their subordinates that the princess couldn't have gone far. They needed to search the entire area. The girl was hiding around the corner. Princess Daphrin remained unnoticed. Jerome waited for the fugitive at the appointed place and time. The young man remembered the image of the princess with tears in his eyes. He was already beginning to think that the princess would not come. However, the door swung open, and Daphrin appeared on the threshold. She asked how long Jerome had been waiting for her. Jerome had been waiting, but he was still surprised when he saw Princess Daphne. The young man looked out the window and saw the knights who were still searching for the princess. They decided to search the entire building because they couldn't let her get away. Daphrin asked anxiously what they should do. They would surely catch her. The young man blocked the door to the room, but the princess said that this would not stop the soldiers. Jerome said that he had expected something like this, so he had brought something with him. They began knocking on the door and demanding that it be opened. The knights assumed that the princess was inside. Jerome told the princess to hold on tight to him. The young man unrolled a scroll and read a spell. The magical transformations began. They went to Tot, disappearing from the room. Duke Icarus said that Viscount Blizzard had proven his mastery of martial arts. Due to Lord Logan Pamos's injury, the position of deputy head of the Order of the Phoenix had become vacant. Icarus added that in connection with this, he would like to offer Viscount Blizzard the position of deputy head of the Order of the Phoenix. Everyone present was surprised to hear such a proposal from the Duke. The Order of the Phoenix is the strongest knightly order in the kingdom, commanded by Count Torio. It is an elite order. If someone is truly good, they are accepted regardless of race or title. Therefore, even among first-class troops, it is considered the best. Blizzard understood that Icarus was unlikely to give him such a responsible position. So what was the catch with the Order of the Phoenix? The Viscount smiled and thanked Duke Icarus. He said that he was far from perfect, but he would fulfill the duty entrusted to him. Icarus said that Blizzard was the epitome of modesty. Who else but the Viscount could handle this? The Duke noted that strange rumors were spreading throughout the castle. The king asked what they were about. The Duke explained that a week ago, on Monday night, someone had seen Princess Isilde and Viscount Blizzard leaving the barn together. Everyone present at the meeting was once again extremely surprised. His Majesty flushed with anger. It was more than surprise. Blizzard remembered the moment when he carried the princess out of the cold barn. It was that very incident. The king asked the Viscount, "Is this true?" Blizzard replied to the king that it was indeed true. Everyone present asked indignantly, "How is that possible? A man and a woman in a barn at night?" His Majesty demanded that the Viscount explain himself immediately. Blizzard said that the princess had gone into the barn late at night to check on the ice wyvern's egg and found herself locked in. He had simply rescued her. Duke Icarus asked who could confirm this. Icarus added that according to witnesses, they were embracing each other. Would the Viscount deny this as well? Blizzard told Duke Icarus to refrain from further insults to the princess and his honor. Nothing had happened between them that day. The Duke said that he would like to believe the Viscount, but words alone were not enough to convince everyone present. Icarus added that if the rumors spread beyond the palace and people began to doubt the princess's chastity, a scandal would erupt. The king banged his fist on the table and said that the small council was adjourned for the day. As he left the room, the Duke said that as long as Blizzard lived in this castle, he would not escape his gaze. Princess Isilde found herself once again in the place she had seen in her dream. The princess saw people talking about a girl who had abandoned her parents and gone over to the barbarians. People claimed that she did not honor those who had raised her. They felt sorry for Lord Meng. Isilde was surprised. What barbarians and what Lord Meng are they talking about? The people looked back at the princess and said that she had no dignity. After all, she was in the barn that night. It was simply disgusting. The princess covered her face with her hands in horror and said that there was nothing between her and Viscount Blizzard. The people's hands reached out to Isilde and grabbed her. The princess screamed for them to let her go immediately. The people repeated that it was disgusting. The girl screamed for them not to come near her. The people repeated the same word, disgusting. The princess came to her senses in her room. She was frightened and covered in cold sweat. The carriage stopped at the castle porch. Guests continued to arrive and wonder, is this really Viscount Blizzard's mansion? But it used to be the Krimmer family mansion. Perhaps His Majesty had lent the mansion to the Viscount in gratitude for saving him? How could the Viscount afford such an expensive mansion? Even Duke Icarus could not afford such a thing. Viscount Blizzard appeared at the door. Everyone in the hall immediately fell silent and turned their attention to the newcomer. The Viscount thanked all the distinguished guests who had come from afar. He said that this reception was dedicated to his being awarded the title of Viscount and his entry into the small state council. Blizzard said that he was Lord Caroluna, deputy head of the Phoenix Knight Order and owner of this mansion. Those present were surprised that this was indeed Viscount Blizzard's mansion. But how could someone who had recently been a commoner achieve such a thing? It is said that he is a sponsor of the Roll Trade Association. Blizzard thought that entrusting this task to Edmund was the right decision. After seeing this mansion, anyone would change their opinion of him. To change the minds of the aristocrats under Icarus's influence, it was important to show that his financial power was greater. After all, what motivated them was power, wealth, and authority. The guests thanked Lord Blizzard for inviting them to this wonderful reception. The host responded to the guests with his hospitality. Lord Rowan said that for some reason he did not see the princess. Blizzard explained that the princess was unable to attend due to poor health. Rowan inquired what events had caused her to feel unwell. Rowan added that there had been rumors lately about the princess's relationship with the Viscount. Were they true? Another guest demanded that Rowan take back his words. The man asked, "Isn't insulting the princess a mockery of the royal family?" He added that if this reached His Majesty's ears, it would not end with a simple reprimand. Rowan was extremely frightened. The guest told Lord Rowan to take better care of his own territories. Rowan cowardly stepped aside. The man added that these people had started spending time with Duke Icarus and decided they were something special. Viscount Blizzard should not worry. Blizzard thanked Baron Vincent for his help. If it weren't for the Baron, he might have lost his temper and destroyed Rowan. Baron Vincent laughed and said that Viscount Blizzard was a funny guy. He took it as an incredibly funny joke. Vincent added that, as a resident of the kingdom, he could not remain silent in the face of insults directed at the princess. Blizzard asked, "Is something wrong on Baron Vincent's territory?" The Baron replied that monster attacks had been occurring for several months. Despite erecting fences and strengthening security measures, casualties continued to mount. He felt guilty towards his subjects. The Viscount asked if the Baron had requested help. Vincent replied that even the royal army had been unable to cope. The Baron remarked that he must solve the problems of his land himself. Viscount Blizzard said that this would be the first thing he would do as deputy head of the Order of the Phoenix. His first mission is to suppress the monsters on Baron Vincent's territory. The protagonist decided that he would help exterminate the monsters in the small domain without any benefit to himself. However, he would take advantage of the support of the Knights of the Phoenix Order. Baron Vincent thanked the Viscount. Blizzard replied that it was the Baron's kindness that helped mobilize the Knights. Our hero said that he had urgent business to attend to and had to leave. They would see each other during the campaign. In a secluded place, the protagonist took out a communication stone and, responding to the request, asked what had happened. Jerome reported that they had caught him. As expected, the first target was the eldest son of the slave family. Blizzard asked where Killer was now. Jerome replied that he was in the basement of the annex at the back of the mansion. The Viscount went down there. The protagonist saw Miller standing next to a bound man with a bag over his head. The Viscount removed the bag from his head. Miller said that he had paralyzed Killer using a technique that Milord had taught him. All of his pressure points had been carefully blocked. Miller added that the self-destruct poison hidden in Killer's molar had been removed. The protagonist decided to use his unique abilities and influence Killer's brain. Blizzard extracted all the necessary information from the villain's head and subjugated him. Killer knelt down and asked his master to give him an order. Miller asked how Milord had done it. The Viscount told the Killer to tell him his name, the name of the man who gave him orders, and also to reveal all the information he had. Killer said his name was Sis. He had received orders from Duke Icarus to destroy John's slave. Blizzard ordered Killer to return to Icarus and report that the order had been successfully carried out. Sis must now report daily on Icarus's every move. Sis replied that he understood his master's orders. Miller asked, "Well, was that a mind control spell?" The Viscount replied that this technique of soul magic was Mahongan, the art of absorbing souls. Miller asked Milord to teach him this technique as well. The Viscount refused this request. Mahongan is a brainwashing method used in cults to select new followers. If a person has not reached a level of power that clearly surpasses that of their opponent, the technique will not work. Blizzard said that even if he taught Miller, there was almost no one he could use it on. The protagonist said that now it was his turn to attack Icarus. Sis arrived at Duke Icarus on orders. The Duke asked if Sis had done everything properly. Killer replied that he had dealt with John's slave. Icarus said that he understood everything and that Sis could leave. At the last moment, Icarus stopped Killer and told Curson to check whether the spell was still working. Curson replied that the spell was still working. The Duke thought that his fears were unfounded. Duke Icarus said that now it was Blizzard's turn. The next day, news of John's slave's death spread throughout the capital. The cause was said to be a fall from a horse. This could happen to anyone, but the timing was too unfortunate. Rumors spread quickly like a snowball, but the public could not know that John was actually alive. This was Sol Mudok's plan. Miller said that chaos must now reign in the capital. Blizzard agreed. After all, the only candidate other than himself had been eliminated. Everyone probably thought that Duke Icarus had dealt with him. Miller told Milord that he was curious about something. The young man asked why the truth couldn't be revealed immediately. After all, the evidence against the Duke was obvious. Couldn't he be caught now? Blizzard replied that in order to do so with certainty, they should not rush. The Duke was very suspicious. If they didn't want him to escape, they needed to prepare more carefully. The Viscount added that there was a more important reason. The rumors about Esselt had disappeared. Fire is extinguished with a bigger fire. Now Icarus had become the subject of condemnation. Miller was only thinking about the location, but Viscount Blizzard was looking much further ahead. The protagonist came with Miller to the residence of the former deputy head of the Phoenix Order. Miller asked, "Is this the one who broke his leg And now my lord has taken his place? The Viscount confirmed this. Miller was surprised. For a house belonging to the deputy head of the best knightly order, it seemed modest. Blizzard said it couldn't be any other way. He left in disgrace, accused of insubordination. As soon as he injured his leg, he immediately attacked his superior. Miller said that something unusual was going on here. There was definitely something strange behind it. Miller added that the field in front of the house was too clean. It was as if no one had been there. The Viscount noted that Miller also knew how to leave no traces. The assistant objected, "But he's a killer. Even he would leave traces if one of his legs was injured." The Viscount asked, "Is Miller trying to say that he moves through the air?" At that moment, someone aimed a bow at the guests. Miller and Blizzard heard a strange sound and looked back. The young men managed to jump out of the way. The arrow stuck into the ground, releasing a significant amount of energy. The Viscount looked at the arrow and was surprised. Was that really a feather? Blizzard looked up at where the feather had flown from and said that now he understood where the fishy smell was coming from. A bird-like creature was sitting on the roof of the house. The bird said that dirty people had arrived. Miller asked, "Did the Viscount not know about this either?" Blizzard confirmed this. The protagonist did not think that Logan would turn out to be half-human. Logan saw the emblem on our hero's chest and became interested in it. After all, it was the emblem of the deputy head of the Phoenix Order. Logan asked if he had come on the orders of the head of the Knightly Order. Logan asked, "Was there really an order to destroy him?" Miller thought that this half-human had misunderstood everything. He needed to tell him the truth. However, Blizzard asked Logan what would happen if it were true. Miller was surprised. "What is my lord doing? Why is he deceiving him if it angers Logan?" The Viscount replied that it was a test. Was Logan strong enough to work under him? Logan angrily said that he would destroy this man. Logan flew into the sky and took aim again. The Viscount told Miller to leave immediately. The protagonist activated his ice sword and prepared to battle the half-human. The Viscount thought that he should first cut off all the feathers and then chase the half-human. Miller said that the feathers of beastmen were very elastic. The sword could bounce off. That's exactly what happened. The next moment, our hero dodged the feather flying at him. Logan said that in that case, he would release 2 feathers at once. How would a human cope with that? Viscount Blizzard replied that the recoil from the feathers is incredibly strong. The protagonist said that in that case, he would deflect the attack and parry the arrows with his sword. The attack continued, the feathers were still there, and my lord said that the half-human was not giving him a break. Blizzard clearly heard 2 feathers flying, but saw only 1 in the air. Our hero had lost sight of the other feather. At the last moment, the Viscount understood everything, and turning around, caught it with his hand. The protagonist thought that this half-human possessed arrows that even his sword could not cut through, and strategies that revealed weak points. Blizzard noted that Logan had the appropriate level of security. Logan was surprised. What did that man just say? Suitable level? The half-human was indignant. How dare a human evaluate him? Logan gathered momentum and prepared to attack the man to engage him in hand-to-hand combat. Miller and Logan's eyes met. Viscount Blizzard rose above Logan and said that now he would find out who was in charge here. Our hero possessed a technique of light steps that allowed him to move freely through the air. Logan was attacked from above and, losing his bearings, began to fall to the ground. The Viscount said that the half-human no longer had a bow. Logan fell to the ground. Bacon said he felt something strange. What had damaged Logan's leg? The half-human lunged at his opponent and said he wasn't going to say anything to some human. The Viscount, using his unique abilities, touched his opponent's injured leg. Logan jerked his leg and said that this man was a scoundrel. How dare he cowardly target my injured leg? Logan thought. Blizzard punched his opponent's leg. Logan gritted his teeth and screamed loudly. The protagonist struck the half-human once more. Logan asked, "Does this man call himself a warrior?" Logan's leg began to undergo structural changes in the areas where he had been struck. Logan shouted for the man to stop immediately. The half-human attacked his opponent with a kick. The Viscount easily blocked the blow. Blizzard asked, "How did Logan do that?" Logan himself was surprised. "Is my leg already healed?" Logan did not understand how this had happened. After all, no doctor on the mainland had been able to heal this wound. Blizzard said that there was nothing they could do for him. The Viscount added that the leg was not damaged. It was cursed. The man explained that the leg was enveloped in chaos mana. Blizzard said he had destroyed the chaos mana with his energy. Logan asked who this man really was. The Viscount replied that he was the one who would make Logan trust people. Logan invited the people into the house and offered them refreshments. He said it was a traditional dish of their tribe. On the table was a roasted wild boar carcass. Miller was delighted and said he was very hungry. Logan slapped Miller's hand away and told him not to touch it. This treat was only for their benefactor. The Viscount said that he was his ward and should also be fed. Logan agreed. Logan threw Miller a mouse and told him to eat it and leave him alone. Viscount Blizzard tasted the roasted meat and said it was very tasty. Miller and Logan were sorting things out at that moment, trying to resolve the conflict that had arisen. The protagonist asked Logan how he had injured his left leg. The Viscount had heard that Logan had blamed Torio, the captain of the Phoenix Knights, for the injury. Why? Logan decided to tell him about the day that changed everything. Logan said that on the day he was appointed deputy, Torio secretly summoned him to his office. He found it strange how warmly his boss welcomed him. Torio was a racist, so he always saw Logan as a thorn in his side. As expected, he made a shocking proposal. Logan said he was outraged in response. Logan said he wasn't going to agree. It was ridiculous. Torio told Logan to think carefully. Once he left that room, he would not be able to change his mind. Logan told Torio to take care of himself. How could the head of a knightly order act this way? Torio used his unique abilities and delivered an energy blast to Logan's left leg. The narrator continued that when Logan came to, he was already in a hospital bed. At first, he thought it was a dream, but it turned out to be reality. His leg hurt terribly. Logan finished his story and fell silent. By this point, half of the boar was already gone. Logan bowed and thanked the man from the bottom of his heart. Logan said that the man not only healed his leg, but also told him that it was a curse. Logan said that now they needed to find out who had cast the curse. Blizzard said that there was no need. He already knew. Miller asked how the Viscount knew this. The Viscount clarified that he knew the name of the person who had ordered it. Blizzard asked Miller if he remembered who Sis was. Miller replied that he was the killer who came for John's slave. Blizzard said that when he used that technique, he felt a strange energy. Now the same thing had happened to Logan's leg. Miller asked, could Duke Icarus be involved in this? Logan was alarmed. Did the man say Icarus? Blizzard was surprised. Why such a strong reaction? Logan stated that the proposal he had rejected was related to Icarus. The proposal concerned treason. They wanted to overthrow the current ruler and make Icarus the new king. Viscount Blizzard smiled. Icarus had finally been caught. Icarus turned and said to his guest, he's finally here. Icarus asked, how are Commander Torio's wounds? Torio replied that his wounds were gradually healing. The commander of the order asked why the Duke had summoned him. The Duke reminded him that Blizzard had recently joined the order. Icarus demanded that Torio bring the scoundrel here. Icarus added that if the commander of the order did so, he would very soon become a duke. Torio knelt down, thanked his lord, and said that he would definitely carry out all his orders. Duke Icarus thought that a trap had been set. He believed that this place would become Blizzard's grave. A bloodied man lay on the floor, and Viscount Blizzard stood before him. Behind him, the head of the order, Torio, approached and asked what Blizzard's deputy was doing there. Braun Vincent thanked Viscount Blizzard for coming. Blizzard said that greetings were unnecessary. Hadn't he promised to deal with the problem that had arisen on the territory? He was a little late because urgent matters had come up. Viscount Blizzard reported that he had sent the Phoenix Knights here a week ago. Vincent acknowledged that thanks to them, the fire had been quickly extinguished. Blizzard asked the Baron why he looked so worried. Vincent replied that he was deeply indebted to the Knights. Vincent added that he had something to tell the Viscount. Did he know what was happening in the Order of the Phoenix? There had been multiple incidents of violence. Viscount Blizzard burst into the room where the Knights were. He saw that the situation looked like hatred towards other races. The Phoenix Knights were indeed beating representatives of other peoples. The protagonist immediately struck the knight who was mocking the beastman. Without hesitation, the Viscount deactivated all the Knights. He grabbed the wounded beastman and tried to save him. The beastman watched the Knights with apprehension, who were confused by the behavior of the deputy commander of the Phoenix Order. The Knights did not understand how this had happened. In a second, the Viscount knocked Commander Butler off his feet and saved the Owlman. Blizzard looked at the bloodied body and said that the Owlman had been severely beaten. He had lost a lot of blood. Commander Torio appeared behind our hero. He asked what Blizzard's deputy was doing. He asked if Commander Torio was being too harsh. Torio showed his damaged eye and told the Viscount to see what these creatures had done to him. Torio pointed at the Owlman and demanded that Blizzard bring him to him immediately. Torio added that if Blizzard disobeyed, he would be punished for insubordination. The Viscount lifted the Owlman to his feet and tried to lead him out of the room. He added that the commander could try and punish him. Blizzard added that in that case, Torio's plans with Duke Icarus would become known. Torio looked at his deputy in alarm. Torio wondered how the Viscount could have found out about the betrayal. The commander of the Phoenix Squad asked how Blizzard found out about it. The protagonist replied that they should stop tormenting the beastmen if they didn't want to end up on the scaffold. The Owlman asked why the deputy commander had helped him. Blizzard replied that he himself had faced discrimination. The deputy commander added that in his homeland, he was despised and called a barbarian. Therefore, he could not gain the recognition of the people and reunite with his beloved. The Viscount added that he intervened because he knew this pain. Blizzard asked why the Owlman put up with it. After all, Beastmen possessed the strength to easily defeat these weaklings. The Owlman agreed. However, he added that this would leave him with no opportunity for dialogue. Solmudok recalled that Huayan had said something similar. He noted that the Owlman had chosen a difficult path. Viscount Blizzard reached out his hand and said he would support the Owlman. It wouldn't take long. Our hero also wanted to see the future that Huayan dreamed of. The evening of the next day arrived. Viscount Blizzard continued to carry out his mission. One of the knights was outraged. How dare Blizzard disgrace him in front of his subordinates? The knight asked if Commander Torio was just going to watch his deputy's actions. Something had to be done. Torio said he saw no need to get his hands dirty. They had been given a task. He pointed to a place on the map and said that Blizzard had to be lured there. The knight asked what was so special about that place. Torio spread his arms and said they didn't need to know. They just had to get that man to come there. The Viscount and the knights headed for the indicated location. The knight who had suffered at the hands of the deputy thought they had already arrived. Rumor has it that Viscount Blizzard is a great swordsman. This area was inhabited by huge bloodthirsty monsters. Commander Torio led the squad. Blizzard followed him. Bacon sensed the presence of a strange energy. The commander raised his hand, ordering everyone to stop. Commander Torio reported that a group of monsters had been spotted ahead. The commander asked if Blizzard's deputy was indeed a great swordsman. Torio asked the deputy to demonstrate his abilities. Blizzard replied that he had to refuse. Torio thought that the deputy suspected something. Could this gathering of monsters be the place Icarus spoke of? The knight wondered if such a thing could frighten the Grand Master. The knight drew his knife and told everyone to watch him closely. He was going to fight the monsters. The knight swung his dagger, and one beast fell, bleeding profusely. Encouraged by his victory, the knight asked what the deputy commander had to say about his swift blade. Commander Torio looked at the knight with fear. Something incredible happened. The destroyed monster clamped its jaws around the knight's throat. Blizzard was surprised. Could the severed parts of the monster be regenerating? The protagonist suggested that they were facing a Zhongshi, a jumping vampire. Torio couldn't believe that they were facing such monsters. No matter how many of them you destroy, they will still come back to life. The squad commander knew that something must be here, but he didn't think it could be undead. Viscount Blizzard said that Icarus was a cruel villain. To catch him, he sacrificed an entire order. Commander Torio thought, did the Duke watch as the Owlman sacrifice them and equate him with this trash? He watched as the Owlman fought this monster. Torio refused to believe it and turned to run away. Blizzard followed him and asked how a man who called himself a commander could abandon his subordinates and run away alone. The Viscount thought that he had not yet learned anything compromising about Icarus. He had to catch up with the commander. The huge monster pounced on Blizzard. The Viscount thought that he was facing a strong opponent. A green liquid was poured on the knight who had been injured by the monster. He was told that it was a restorative elixir. The knight recovered and said that he had survived thanks to this elixir. He thought that he was facing Commander Torio. However, when the knight raised his head, he saw that he was facing an Owlman. The Owlman said that the commander had fled. If the knight had survived, then he had to get up. His strength would be useful in the fight. The knight was surprised because the Owlman himself was in terrible condition, yet he had given him the only medicine he had. The knight could not understand why the Owlman was doing this, because he had beaten him earlier. The Owlman asked in surprise what the guy was talking about. After all, they were comrades. Did he need any more reasons? The knight jumped to his feet and grabbed his sword. He prepared himself once again to face the monsters. The knight said that he would definitely survive and repent for the rest of his life. The Owlman replied that he would wait for that. Both knights prepared to repel the monster's attack. Viscount Blizzard continued to repel the attack of the boss monster, a huge beast. Our hero thought that no matter how much he cut it, it would still regenerate. Viscount Blizzard noticed that after freezing the monster to reduce its mobility, the frozen parts of its body stopped regenerating. The deputy commander realized that ice was the weakness of these monsters. At that moment, Baron Vincent and his squad rushed to our hero's aid. Late at night, the Baron received an urgent message informing him that Phoenix's squad had been attacked by undead creatures. Baron Vincent decided that it was necessary to come to the aid of Viscount Blizzard, a benefactor who did everything for their land. The Baron shouted for the knights to hold on. Reinforcements had arrived. However, there was no one left to fight. Vincent saw only chunks of ice around him. Viscount Blizzard said that Baron Vincent was too late. There was no one left to fight. The Baron's hands continued to tremble. It was not fear or cold, but awe. After this incident, the Viscount was given the nickname, the King who freezes death itself. That is what they called him. There are 3 orders of knights in the kingdom of Draki. The first is the Order of the Phoenix. The second is the Order of the Titans. The third and last is the Order of the Storm. As soon as Torio returned, he summoned the other 2 commanders to him. Both commanders, Gordon and Robert, arrived. Torio said that Icarus was a cruel scoundrel. To catch him, he sacrificed an entire order. How could he abandon it? Torio believed that he had to prove his worth in any case. Torio apologized to his colleagues for calling them at such a late hour. The commander of the Storm Order, Gordon, said there was no need to apologize. If the Count called, he would come anytime. Baron Roberts, commander of the Titans Order, told Torio to quickly say what he wanted. Torio thought that Baron Roberts was a royalist who had sworn allegiance to the king. Torio decided that Roberts would also side with Icarus today. Like Logan, he would not be able to refuse the offer. Torio asked if they had heard what had happened to John Slave. Torio said that Slave was quite pathetic. While serving the king, he lost his son. Torio added that if Slave had followed Icarus, this would not have happened. Storm was surprised. Could he really speak so bluntly? Torio replied that he had thought it through. Robert asked what the threat was. He would not obey Icarus. Torio said he had not suggested that. Torio added that under normal circumstances, he would have said so, but now it was indeed a threat. Torio declared that a rebellion was coming soon. The current dynasty would be overthrown, and Icarus would become the new king. Torio added that he and Gordon had already been promised positions. Torio told Baron Roberts to choose wisely now. It was now common knowledge that the current king had no power. Torio thought that Roberts had considerable influence in the royal faction. If he switched sides, the rest would follow. Roberts was indignant. Who said the king had no power? The king had him and the Order of Titans. Roberts said that Gordon and Torio could surrender. They had until dawn. In that case, he would ask that their entire clan not be destroyed. A woman appeared from the wine poured out. She said it was a pitiful sight. Torio tried to lure this man over to take credit for it, but failed again. Torio knelt down, bowed his head, and apologized to Lady Curson. Gordon realized that they were facing the Black Mage and Icarus's confidant. Torio asked for just one chance. He would definitely justify the trust placed in him. Curson said that it was just in time. She needed him. Curson added that Torio was finished. Curson asked Icarus via remote communication what to do with Baron Roberts. Icarus replied that he had to be eliminated. Torio thought that his plan was slowly beginning to fall apart. With Blizzard's arrival, everything was going awry. Right now, Viscount Blizzard annoyed the Duke more than the king. Icarus said that in that case, he had no rivals except Viscount Blizzard. Now that he was away from the capital, there might not be a more opportune moment. The knight came to the beastmen with apologies and asked for forgiveness for mocking them. He knew that apologies would not change anything and said that he would atone for it for the rest of his life. Viscount Blizzard said it didn't take long. He dealt with it quickly. The Owlman said that everything should be done gradually, not for temporary peace, but for a lifelong connection. After hearing about a lifelong connection, the protagonist remembered Hua-Yun again. Now Sol Mudok understood why Hua-Yun insisted on negotiations. It wasn't short-term peace achieved by force, but Hua-Yun's dream of growing old together. The protagonist decided that he finally truly understood Hua-Yun. Short, continuing to monitor the target, told his lord that it had finally begun. Duke Icarus had started a rebellion. 2 hours later, the commander of the Order of Titans was in his office. Roberts thought that the knights had already been given the order. Torio and Gordon had gone over to the enemy. Tomorrow his squad would go after them, so let the traitors prepare themselves. Roberts looked back and saw that Torio and Gordon had entered his office. The commander of the Order of Titans was surprised. Through what crack had they slipped in? Roberts quickly assessed the situation and noticed his sword lying on the table. However, Torio and Gordon, having turned into monsters, pounced on Roberts. Roberts did not understand what was happening to them. How did this happen? Roberts noticed that all his knights had suddenly become undead. Curson appeared before Roberts and asked if he was still alive. The Black Mage said that she had ordered Torio to destroy Roberts, but this man continued to make mistakes even after his death. Roberts asked if she had really done this to his knights. Curson confirmed this and asked what Roberts would do now. Robert grabbed his sword and Curson rose up. The undead attacked the commander. Roberts was forced to fight back. However, the forces were unequal and Roberts was wounded. Curson approached the bleeding commander and asked if he was afraid of death. The Black Mage told the commander not to worry, he would definitely not die. After receiving information from Short, Viscount Blizzard thought that Essel was in danger. The protagonist announced that he was leaving for the capital immediately. Short reported that Icarus's supporters were gathering troops in their territories. If they all gathered in the capital, no one would be able to stop Icarus. Short said that the Blizzard Order was heading there. My lord could leave the capital to him and stop the concentration of forces. Blizzard said he understood and asked them to hold out until his arrival. Blizzard made an emergency announcement and reported that Icarus had started a rebellion. Their task now is to destroy the reinforcements. His wyvern Lilith appeared above the Viscount. Blizzard decided that they needed to finish everything quickly and find Escald.